Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the workshop. It is Dr. Susan Peirce Thompson here, and I am joined by my beloved friend and amazing colleague, Everett Considine. Say hi, Everett.
Hello, everyone.
Yay.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. And this is our workshop today, Internal Family Systems and Eating Issues, the Bright Line Eating Approach. This is a very novel approach to this subject that Everett Considine and I have pioneered together. It really is a joint creation born from the expertise of Everett Considine and the expertise of myself and the just bajillions of hours of work that we have done with people recovering, transforming their eating issues in a certain kind of way, in a certain kind of framework. Very, very cutting edge stuff, and we can't wait to present it. So I want to talk about the food addiction susceptibility scale for a second, because I do believe that we have a poll. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, let me actually start that poll right now. Have you taken the food addiction susceptibility quiz? Have you taken that quiz? I want to know if you have taken the quiz and you already kind of know what we're talking about here. Okay, yeah, most people. So have you taken the food addiction susceptibility quiz, AKA the food freedom quiz? Great, we're going to end that poll. It's like 90% of people have. So what that means is that you're probably no stranger to the idea that food addiction is real. Food addiction is a thing. There's a lot of neuroscientific evidence to support that at this point. I was just talking over breakfast, I think, with somebody that because there's always naysayers that come in and say food addiction is controversial, it's not really a thing. And I just finished writing my third book. It'll be published in December, and I go into food addiction a lot in that book, and also into the sort of resistance against that concept. Like, why are some people still resistant to that notion? It's kind of baffling at this point. But what they often say is there's no evidence in humans, it's all in rodents. And actually, the evidence in humans has reached a point where not only is it clear that food addiction is real in the brain, but there's a pattern of neurological activity in people who suffer from addiction that people who suffer from food addiction match up in lockstep. So, for example, it's not just cravings generated by dopamine downregulation in the nucleus accumbens. And let me actually just for a second here, just turn my slides off so you can see me talk here. It's not just cravings generated by a lack of dopamine, which is really just blunted and fewer dopamine receptors in the nucleus accumbens that creates this dopamine shortfall that makes you like really crave something that you're familiar with to give you that hit. It's not just that. It's also heightened cue reactivity to the cues that predict your drug of choice. Like, so someone who suffers from food addiction will have a way bigger response in their brain to seeing the branding logos or the sight of someone eating something that they love to eat or something like that. Those cues will hijack their brain more than someone else who doesn't suffer from food addiction. Also, cognitive impairments, unfortunately, like blunted impulse control around your drugs of choice, and also like other cognitive impairments like memory delays. And what happens is the presence of thoughts about your drug of choice, or just, I guess, living with the handicap of having a heightened addictive reaction to something creates other cognitive delays, cognitive impairments. That can be measured. And this is what you see in people who suffer from all sorts of addictions, including food addiction. So food addiction's, pretty much a slam dunk in evidence at this point, but it's not just a binary function. It's not like you are a food addict or you have food addiction or you don't. It really is a continuum where, 1/3 of people, and yes, there is evidence in rodents as well, of course, 1/3 of people are low in susceptibility to food addiction. 1/3 of people are in the mid-range and 1/3 of people are high. Everett and I first met in 2015. That's accurate, right? Yeah, in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And we met because the first person in Bright Line Eating, like the first person to sign up for Bright Line Eating, Lyndon Morris Del Rio, who now has, been in her Bright Body for 6.5 years, maybe, yeah, 6.5 years, and now is a Bright Line Eating team member and actually oversees all of our online communities and all the people who support people in Bright Line Eating and all the online communities. That's all Lyndon Morris Del Rio. And Lyndon lived in the Northwest where Everett was living. Everett was living in Seattle at the time. Lyndon was a client of Everett's and had been doing parts work with him for years. And Lyndon was like, she just one night on the phone, I remember where I was. I remember I was in a parking lot pulling out of somewhere and going somewhere. I was on the phone with Lyndon and she said, you need to meet this man. You and he are going, your brains are going to get together. She said, I don't know what's going to happen when you talk to this man, but your brains need to get together. And I remember kind of thinking, yeah, like this woman has no idea how busy I am. Right? There's a lot of people I need to meet, Lyndon. Yeah. I'm like, you don't understand. I'm drowning over here. Bright Line Eating just exploded. I got 3 kids. I got thousands of people to serve. I know I need to meet whoever you think I need to meet, but blah, blah, blah. And so it didn't happen. And it didn't happen until I started having challenges with my food downstream a little bit, because all the stress sort of snowballed and suddenly I was back in the food and I hadn't been eating addictively for years at that point. And I reached out to Everett. I was like, Lyndon, who was that guy? And I think I want to schedule a session with him myself. And I got one session, life-changing insight, like amazing. And I started referring people to Everett, like left, right, and center. And they would come back and say, oh my gosh, I bought a 3-session package with Everett. And I'm like, so helpful. As soon as I'd be coaching with someone and I'd realize, okay, they're stuck inside in some kind of way. And I don't really know what it is, but Everett will figure it out. And I would send them to Everett. And Everett would do a little one-on. And then Everett left me a Voxer message. This is an app that allows you to leave voices for people. So Everett left me this voicey. And I remember where I was when I was listening to that too. I was in the bathroom. That's where I was listening to this voicey. And it must have been a while ago because it was back at 18 Brixton Drive where I don't live anymore. And I was in the bathroom and you were like, Susan, I've been working, like, thank you. You said, first of all, thank you. You've stacked my practice. Like I'm overflowing with clients and thank you. And you said, but I've been working with nothing but Bright Line Eating people now for years. And I'm seeing the patterns and I've put together this map of the psyche, like how it works. Like there's only so many issues that people have when they're trying to get their food handled. And I've figured out the patterns. And whenever you have time, you're always so great to work with because you're so understanding of the pressures on me and stuff. But you're like, no rush, but whenever you have time, I want to explain this parts map to you that I've figured out. And I think I invited you to present it to all of us at the next family reunion, which was one of the early family reunions. And then we created this course, Bright Line Freedom, and we started offering that. And we've been changing a lot of lives. Like people can do Bright Line Eating. There's some percentage of people that they hear about Bright Line Eating, they sign up, they're ready, they do it, and they're like off to the races, they're good to go. But that's like a sliver. That's just a relatively small percentage of people. I would say the way bigger percentage of people are going to need some help figuring out their resistance at certain stages of the game, maybe even before they can even get started. So that's my story of our partnership, Everett. What's your version of it? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I want to go back a little before we met because I think it's useful. It's a useful part of the story. So I've been doing IFS. I was trained 12 years ago. And when I discovered IFS, and if you're discovering IFS in this workshop, you may even have a reaction like this. But a lot of people feel like IFS is the missing piece of the puzzle for them in their inner work. And I certainly felt that way. I had a really deep spiritual background, years and years of meditation and teaching meditation, but not really. I didn't really have good psychological tools for emotional healing, and I had a partner who died. It was a tragic death that was related to crystal meth. This was about, I don't know, 16 years ago. And one of the things that happened from my grieving was I started to have an issue with my weight. And when I found Bright Line Eating, I was 60 pounds heavier than I am now, and I had been struggling for years to try and lose my weight, like coming up with just like the thing we all do, right? Like trying every diet and doing Nutrisystems and eating that, getting their food in the mail and eating it and losing that weight. And then as soon as you stop doing that, all the weight comes back, just like all the frustrations. I even signed on to do a 200-mile bike ride, and I thought, oh, training for this bike ride is going to be it. This is going to be the thing that finally is going to allow me to lose all this weight. And I didn't lose any weight, except I got bigger thighs. I think I gained some weight, and I was doing internal family system. And internal family system has a way that they work with eating disorders and eating issues, but it's not necessarily oriented towards weight loss. It's more oriented towards acceptance. And so I wasn't able to really use my IFS skills myself to lose weight, except to work with all the parts that were so frustrated about the whole thing. And so Lyndon, who Susan talked about, was a client of mine for a couple of years, and she had put on some extra weight, and we spent 4 or 5 months doing the IFS approach to see if we could help her take that weight off, and it just didn't click. And it had, at this point, I was a certified IFS practitioner, so I knew IFS, and IFS by itself wasn't enough for me, and it turns out what we know is it's not enough for food addicts. Maybe it's enough for someone out there. And so when I ran into Susan, and Susan started sending me people. So when I discovered, Lyndon, I watched, this is what I wanted to say. So Lyndon was a client of mine, and then we were working on weight loss stuff, and it wasn't working. And then she kind of stopped seeing me for a while, and I started to notice on Facebook she was losing all her weight, and she lost all her weight like in 6 months. And she said, I'm doing this thing called Bright Line Eating, and at first I was just like, oh, that's great, because I knew she wanted to do that. I was excited for her. And then as I saw her Facebook posts, after a while, I was like, well, I need to lose some weight. I've been struggling with my weight. And so at a certain point, I reached out to Lyndon and said, what are you doing? And she turned me on to Bright Line Eating and talked about boot camps. And I'm kind of a go for it kind of person. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a boot camp. And I signed up for that first boot camp in October 2015. Well, first, when I heard it was no sugar and no flour, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I can do that. Like, I really didn't know. I was like, I don't know if I could do that. So I thought, well, before I do the boot camp, I'm just going to try and do no sugar and no flour for a month. And I did. And then I realized, like, oh, that just means you don't eat crap anymore. There's still plenty of food to eat. And so I did no sugar, no flour for a month, and I was able to do it. And I signed up for a boot camp. And then my life was so crazy and busy and my eating so disordered. I think I watched maybe 2 of those videos and then just tuned out of it and was just back in my world of disordered eating. But I kept that. I knew I had the desire to do it. So the following February, I jumped into a boot camp, and then that was the boot camp that really stuck. And I lost like 18 pounds in the boot camp, and I felt great. And I was like, I can do this. And And then, so I started my own bright line eating journey at that point. And, and I'm not quite, it was within a couple months, I got introduced to Susan, and I started to do IFS with BLE people. But the thing I've realized is that bright line eating and IFS are really a magical combination. And even sometimes I have clients that come to me and say, well, I don't want to do BLE because it's too rigid. It feels too strict. And I tell them, the reason parts work works with BLE is because it's a specific program that you're doing. And in other words, there's something to bump up against. If you don't do part of the program, we instantly know there's a part there. And that's really how I got my start working with BLE people, is like, okay, I don't want to break my lines. So I'm like, okay, let's see what parts are making you break your lines, right? And then we work.
And let me just pause you real quick. I noticed we still have the chat on, and a bunch of people have said, what is IFS? And I just want to say, we're going to cover that. So if you don't know what IFS is, if you don't know what parts work means, we're totally going to cover that. As a matter of fact, really soon, we're going to cover that.
Very soon.
Yeah. Very soon. But yeah, it's so interesting. I'm not sure that I really registered until now that you tried to do parts work, IFS, with Lyndon before she found Bright Line Eating, and it didn't help her lose weight. It didn't really work. You need the structure of Bright Line Eating.
You need the structure
to get that traction, and then you can do parts work as you're trying to do this incredibly efficacious, very, very structured, Bright Line Eating is practically miraculous in how well it works to handle a weight problem, but not if you're not doing it. So you have to.
Right. It's worth getting through your resistance, right? It's worth actually
your resistance,
working through that.
Yeah, totally. That's what we're going to talk about. And Miriam has something. This is a very non-trivial point. This is so non-trivial. Miriam just has a comment in the chat thread that sounds, sure, a very reasonable comment. Everett, thank you for sharing your story with us. The fact that you've also struggled means you can really understand our struggles.
Yeah.
And I just want to pause for a moment on that, because if you take nothing else away from this workshop, just for the rest of your life, notice who's trying to help people with their eating issues and their weight issues. And are they coming from a place of having had eating issues and weight issues in that same way, to that same degree? And is that solution that worked for them what they're trying to pass on? Or do they have some degree and they learn something from a textbook? I'm a fan of book learning, nothing wrong with that. But it's a very different thing, because actual lived weight loss doesn't work the way you'd think it would. Or no one would have a weight issue already, frankly, right?
Oh, yeah.
Actual lived weight loss doesn't work the way you'd think it would. And if someone is trying to peddle their approach to eating healthy and they have never had a food addiction problem or a weight loss struggle, just saying, beware. The odds that the solution that they're peddling is not going to be strong enough for your brain, or not actually going to work with the quirks of your situation, the odds of that are extremely high. So it's just something to notice, right? Not that doctors and nutritionists and exercise gurus and all those things don't have a way that works for them. It does. But that food addiction susceptibility scale, and also magnitude of weight loss, just saying, it's a different thing to go from 400 pounds to 150 pounds. And the only reason that I know that this works for that is because tons of other people have actually done it. If there weren't a good track record of that, I'd have no business offering it as a solution for someone who's 400 pounds. So yeah, just saying, it's a really important point, Miriam. And, and I come from a 12-step background where, it takes one to know one. right? Like it takes, I don't think by and large people who haven't had the same problem are having nearly the success.
I had no idea what it actually takes to take a bunch of weight off and keep it off. It literally takes a village. It takes a village.
Yeah.
But people have no idea. They're like, oh, I'll do intermittent fasting. There's like this very surfacey, like, oh, and they try it and their parts come up and say no and they drop it. And it just, but we've worked it all out here in Bright Line Eating.
Yeah.
Like all that support is available. And now all the support around the resistance is available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's dive in because that's where we're gonna cover. Mm-hmm. So let's dive in. And I am going to go ahead and present what we're covering today. Here we go. So this is Everett and I. You'd lost some, but not all of your weight back then.
Yeah, I had lost 40 pounds.
40 out of the 60.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, and Everett's a bright lifer. Like he does this. He's in our community.
Oh, yeah. I'm like at 659 bright consecutive days at this point.
I am too. I'm at almost 700 bright consecutive.
Yeah, we're close.
Yeah, totally. And I'm at 18 plus years since I first started doing this.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been in my bright body now for 17 years. Yeah. Okay, so here's the outline for what we're doing today. And are my slides still advancing? Yeah, they're still working.
Yes.
Okay. So first I'm going to do a little presentation here on the problem, just to orient all of us to what we're working with today. And we're going to go through the parts work framework. So all of you who are like, what's IFS? What's parts work? What's IFS? That's what we're going to cover. Then we're going to talk about how it works and what to do with it. So we're going to help you identify your parts. And we're also going to do some really experiential stuff. And I do believe Everett's going to do some on me. I've brought a problem that I'm encountering in my bright journey to this workshop. Now, this is really edgy for me. Oh my gosh, this is so edgy. But right in front of you all, I'm going to let Everett do some parts work magic on me, and we'll see if we can help me get a breakthrough. And then we're going to help you get a breakthrough. But it's very helpful to see it happen in someone else. It gives you a sense of what we're talking about. So we're going to work on breakthroughs. We're going to talk about the course that we're starting, Bright Line Freedom. And then we're going to do a Q&A plus more breakthroughs. We're going to try to save the last hour for that. Where we're going to bring you into it and answer all your questions. And if you've got, a specific like breakthrough that you need to have, we'll see if we can help you with that and so forth. So that's our outline for today. And I want to start off by talking about the problem. So the problem, I mean, where do we start, right? Let's start big. Let's start at the 60,000 foot level. The problem is that we're getting fatter. God bless us, we are getting fatter. So this is the world obesity stats in 1975. Basically, there weren't any countries except, just the merest that had more than 15% obesity, right? Just hardly anything. And now watch as time moved on, what happened. Notice it started in the Middle East first. So interesting. The United States didn't really even catch up until like the early 80s. At some point, of course, we did take the lead, but, that issue in the Middle East was driven by soda consumption, which, they don't have access necessarily as good access as we have to clean water. But it really isn't till well after 2000 that the United States started to take the lead. And now this is really interesting because it goes above. This is where these data, which were compiled painstakingly, I can't even tell you how painstaking it was to compile these worldwide data. I didn't do it, but this publication in 2016, the most recent stats they had to go on are 2014. And I don't know that anyone's done this since then. But where this goes, if you think about it, the United States The last data that we've seen are from 2018, which is, of course, pre-COVID, right? Like that's old already. And that's 42.4% of the United States is obese as of 2018. So notice the top here is above 30. So we need to add another color above 35, another color above 40, and probably post-COVID now, of course, there's been a lot of weight gain since COVID, so probably above 45. We were supposed to hit 50% obesity in 2030. My guess is that we might already be there because of COVID. That sort of accelerated things, right? So this is really, really scary. It's as bad as you think and worse, right? 2.1 billion people are overweight or obese in the world now. China and India lead the world in numbers, sheer numbers of overweight people. So it's not a United States problem. Developing nations, obesity is now a bigger problem than malnutrition everywhere. Obesity is a bigger problem than malnutrition everywhere. In the United States, about 150 million people are on a diet on any given day, and the Middle East has the highest per capita rates of type 2 diabetes, weight-related. 20% have diabetes, not pre-diabetes, have diabetes in the Middle East. 63% of the deaths worldwide are due to diet-related diseases, not, you know, infectious diseases, not malaria, not all those things. 63% of the deaths worldwide are diet-related. And it's getting worse. It's just going to keep getting worse. McDonald's opened a new restaurant in China every single day over the past 3 years. The effects of that haven't been logged fully yet. It's estimated that about $47 trillion will be spent on diseases caused by the global industrial diet over the next 20 years. Here's a shocking one. The average dieter makes 4 or 5 new attempts each year. And fewer than 1% get slender in any given year. And of those, almost all will regain the weight. So the numbers are just abysmal. I mean, just think about that. Imagine a university or a college that was graduating only 1% of the students. Graduating 1%. And now imagine that some investigative reporter dug deep and discovered that the rest of the student body, 99%, were dropping out of that school and then re-enrolling 4 or 5 times each academic year. What would we think? Would we think, boy, what a bunch of lazy students? Is that what we would think? Or would we think, okay, there's a flaw in that system. That college or university is clearly not doing a good job, right? So what I want to say is, obviously, the way most people in the world are thinking about weight and weight loss is completely flawed. Through and through. So such that no deviation on the standard paradigm and nothing that's been proposed out there is working, right? Basically, not only do we have an obesity pandemic, we have an obesity mystery. It just doesn't make sense, the data that we're seeing, because people want to lose weight so badly. People want to lose weight and they just can't make it work. They're trying and failing at rates that literally do not make sense. They just don't make sense. People solve harder problems all the time. Like, really, can we just not bend our elbow and put that fork in our mouth as often? Like, what is so hard? Let's get clear. Nobody's unclear that they should be eating less pizza and more blueberries, more broccoli, more salad, fewer donuts. People are not unclear about this, and studies show that, right? It's not confusion about nutrition. People are clear which foods they should be eating and which foods they should not be eating. And what is so hard? So it's really important to ask what's going on. Now, I started asking this because I had a drug problem in my teens, crystal meth, crack cocaine. When I got clean and sober 27 years ago next Monday, woo, 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 it's my anniversary. It's the biggest day of the year to me, is August 9th, 1994. 27 years ago, I got clean and sober. And then I got fat really, really fast. I was obese by my mid-20s, and I tried everything to lose my weight, and nothing worked. So this was the day in San Francisco that I got struck clean and sober by powers beyond my comprehension. So grateful for that day. The number of miracles that came together for me to get clean and sober on that day. boggles my mind. I did good things with my drug and alcohol recovery. I got an education. I graduated from UC Berkeley in cognitive science at the top of my class, spoke at the graduation, went to the University of Rochester, was and still is in the top 3 schools in the world in brain and cognitive sciences, got my Ph.D., got into every grad school I applied to, Johns Hopkins, all the rest. University of Rochester was better, went there. And I gained weight all that time, doing all that great stuff, you know, publishing studies, doing great work, and I could not control my eating. Could not control my eating. This is me, 60 pounds more than I weigh now. And here's the tan line of the jogging bra. Do you see my back and you see that white part right there? That's the tan line of the jogging bra because I had just finished running a marathon and I was training all summer. So that tan line persisted. Yep, could not control my eating. And then I lost 60 pounds in 6 months and have been in a bright body since 2004, something like that. Did a postdoc in psychology at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, taught for a couple of years at Hobart and William Smith colleges, a beautiful liberal arts college, taught for many years at Monroe Community College, got tenure there, and now hold an appointment in the Department of Brain and Cognitive Sciences on the faculty there to the present day. And I have 3 daughters. I have 3 sweet daughters. So, you know, girls are, and maybe bunnies, I don't know, are overrepresented in, you know, weight struggles for sure. And, you know, raising kiddos in this current food environment is a hard job. So it is a personal struggle in every way. I do want to say that what we think about here at Bright Line Eating is not just about weight. Plenty of slender people struggle with their eating too. They just have developed strategies so that it doesn't show up on their body. But 22%, according to our research, of slender people qualify as full-blown food addicts. So we need a solution that addresses not just weight, but food obsession. And what we're going to be focusing on today is the Bright Body Transformation. The Bright Body Transformation. And I'm going to show you some pictures from our Bright Line Eating official public Facebook group. You can join this group if you want to. You go to Facebook and you type in Bright Line Eating Official. It's a public group. There's just shy of 50,000 members in there, and you can join the group if you want to. And if you're in that group, you will see pictures. People post their pictures fairly regularly. You'll see pictures like these from Katrina. Amazing. Look at her. Look at her. Owen. Yes, wearing the same shirt. Look at that. Rachel. Oh, Rachel. Peggy. Look at that. Look at that. You look at that after picture and you would never think that that's someone who'd struggled with a weight problem, which is why I tell people take your before pictures, because afterwards no one will believe you. And as we were talking about in the chat thread, it matters to people that you have personal experience with something, right? It matters. Kelly. Charity. Oh my gosh, I love Charity. She is so great. She's 80. Just saying, that woman is 80. Look at her transformation. Richard. Look at him. Nice belt buckle. Denise. Woo, look at that shoulder. Yeah, baby. John. Look at John. Wow. Holly. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, look at that. Holly. Amazing. Matt. Oh, Matt. It's amazing. And look at that tan line that he's got. You could tell he's been outdoors, right? Yeah, and not just that day, but lots of days. He is enjoying the sun. Dale. Look at that, Dale. Jackie. You go, Jackie. Beautiful. Liza. Whew. What a transformation. Manu. Amazing. That is a lot of weight. It just keeps going. Like if you're in that group, it's mind blowing. Every day you can just go in there and just see this program works. Mark Allen. Awesome. Sue. Amazing, Sue. Someone says the after pictures always glow. Jessa is commenting. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Liza, look at this. This is a different Liza. We've got two Lizas. They're different. Teresa, look at this. Oh, Teresa. And Ed. I love how many people in their after pictures are like clearly in the midst of exercising. Like they're clearly, which means they've figured out to, yeah, get back to exercise, because just, you know, if you haven't been here for very long, we typically recommend that people don't start exercising right at the beginning of their weight loss journey with Bright Line Eating. We recommend that they spend a little while as a couch potato and just figure out the food part. But it is good to get back to exercise or to start exercising once you're in your bright body. So Ed has clearly figured that out, you can tell. And Anna, look at how she is glowing. And not that she wasn't happy before, not that she wasn't so valuable and worthwhile and beautiful, truly beautiful before, but there is something to having the bright body transformation. We're going to talk about what that is, what that means in a second here. Oh, and Ashley and Chris, amazing, right? I have had that transformation and there is nothing like it. There is nothing like it. And I want that for you. And again, it is not just about the body. This is a whole holistic, comprehensive transformation that is more about how you feel about yourself, more about alignment and how you show up in the world, more about being truly set free, like just a liberation of efforts and energies. It just comes together in a way that's hard to put words to. But each of those pairs of pictures represents a lot of dedication, a lot of grace, a lot of hard work, and being ready to do it. Like really being ready and figuring out whatever it takes to do it and sustain it, which is a little different in every case. Everybody is unique. This is nuanced. It's like the bright lines are clear and the Bright Line Eating transformation is personal. Everybody does it however it is that they do it. And I can't tell you what it'll take for you to have your bright transformation, but there's a lot that's available here. And if you're listening and you're wanting it and you stay here with your ears perked up, your ears to the train tracks, you will hear the train whistle for you. And you will know it's coming and it's your job to get on it and go. And there is so much to it. This is not about, oh, be thin because society wants you to be thin. We are not repeating that sad, tired verse. And at the same time, if you know that these extra pounds are not helping your health, they're not helping your joints, they're not helping your spirit, they're not helping your emotions, they're not helping your brain, and you're over it already, you really want that problem solved, thank you very much, then you are in the right place. And if the magic hasn't happened for you, you are still here. Fall down 7 times, get up 8. What would be the most true and beautiful and wild version of your Bright Line Eating story? And you are still writing it. You have got this. I'm going to go back and talk about how this transformation is not just physical. Make no mistake, this is not just physical. It's physical, yes. We do help people lose weight. I'm not going to gloss over that. It's important. It's important. But it's also mental, and it's emotional, and it's spiritual. Physical health is a big piece of it. Yes, your bright-sized body. There is something to losing weight. It does help. There's a lot of other health things that improve or turn around here. We're talking about literally preventing and reversing disease. Now, I need to put some asterisks up there. Working in coordination with your doctor. I am not medically trained. You can call me doctor, but that's only because I have a Ph.D. and it's in brain and cognitive sciences. I took 0 courses in medicine. My courses were all about the mind and the brain. That's my area of expertise. So if you have a medical condition, you work with your doctor, but we have data showing a lot of things improving and turning around here. That's not a promise, it's a prediction based on both our data and the scientific medical obesity literature as a whole. It really shows that when you take off significant weight, really of any degree, 5% of your body weight on up, things are going to improve. That's just a medical fact. On average, right? We're talking about physical mobility, which matters. You're living in a world that you've got to get around in. It starts from the minute you get out of bed in the morning. We're talking about living in your goal body. I don't mean like cover of Sports Illustrated body. I mean a body that can do stuff. That's the goal body idea, right? A body that can buckle a seatbelt with ease, that can rock climb if you want to, that can play with your kids or your grandkids on the floor and keep up and go do fun stuff. A body that can get on a bicycle with ease, a body that can just move around the kitchen and dance when you're cooking dinner, a body that can garden, a body that can do stuff. Less pain, fewer aches, fewer pains, with good joints and muscles and soft tissues and less inflammation. Goal body means living life. Your body is your vehicle for living life. And then we're talking about maintenance. We're not just talking about losing a few pounds and then gaining them back. We're talking about getting to maintenance and then living there. And in Bright Line Eating, maintenance is about doing the maintenance dance. It's an ebb and a flow. We're talking about eating an abundance of whole, colorful, delicious, real foods, not foods out of packages. You will not see me sell you foods out of packages. No. Go to the grocery store and buy food, actual real food that farmers have prepared and cultivated for you and pulled out of the ground. That's what I'm sending you off to do. I'm not sending you to go buy my shakes and bars. No. And if I ever do that, would you please just stop following me? Because I will have sold my soul when you see me selling you a powder, a pill, or a bar. Truly. And at maintenance, ideally, really not hungry or hardly ever hungry, where you're really eating enough food to sustain your body and you're in your goal body. You've had your bright body transformation. Now, on the mental side, it's about food neutrality, where you're safe and protected. The problem has been removed. You're not fighting it. You haven't even sworn off. You're not resisting. Really, it's not a problem anymore. Not because you're eating those foods, but because you're not eating those foods, those sugar and flour foods. And it's not a problem. The problem has been removed. Those foods look like plastic. They look like Malibu Barbie, little like accessories. Like they're not even food. Let's be real. And this kind of framing comes from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's why I have that book there. That's how they talk about alcohol, that by a certain point in your journey, the drinking problem will have been removed and you'll have been placed in a position where you're safe and protected. You're not resisting. You haven't even sworn off. It's just gone. The mental piece is about a positive body concept, loving your body. It's about self-compassion. It's about understanding that even if you have gained back weight, regardless, if you have not had your goal body transformation, you are loved, you are lovable, you are worthwhile, and you're on your journey. You are on your journey. The emotional piece of the bright body transformation means more joy. You saw it in some of those after pictures, the radiance, right? Like just turn up the dial a little bit. The positive mood, because the science of happiness and food is that the foods we eat here on Bright Line Eating, they do lift the mood, including often lifting people out of depression, not always, but often, and just overall better mood and more stable emotions. And on the spiritual level, we're talking about strong vagal tone, the 10th cranial nerve that connects the brain to the heart and the gut and the organs, that literally makes you more open to loving and being loved. It gives you a strong gut instinct, so you have a stronger intuition to follow. It means living with integrity, trusting yourself, feeling empowered, more in connection with that deep feeling of knowing. This is the transformation we're talking about, where your body has become a vehicle for fulfilling your life's purpose. And you're not burning up your time thinking about what you've eaten or not eaten, whether you're on your plan or off your plan, how many miles, how many calories, how many pounds. Done with that. Done with that. Your body is bright, and it's a vehicle for fulfilling your life's purpose. So that's the bright body transformation. But so many are not experiencing their bright body transformation. So many. Or not experiencing it in full, right? A third of people here said that they're doing bright line eating, but they'd like to be more successful. And lots of people had fallen off the wagon and were thinking about getting back on track. Lots of people hadn't started. Maybe because of fear of like, what if it doesn't work? Or maybe still kicking the tires, like, I'm just not sure about this bright line eating thing. All of these things can boil down to inner resistance. Inner resistance. And that's what we're going to be working on today. We're going to be learning about IFS and parts work. And we're going to be, through learning about IFS and parts work, which is, in my opinion, the most incredibly powerful framework of the human mind, the human psyche that's ever been developed, ever been proposed. It's just brilliant. Just by learning about that, if you haven't heard about it already, you will be given such a tool for understanding yourself for the rest of your life. And we are going to help you understand how to use that insight to catalyze and jumpstart your bright line eating journey, to burn away that resistance, to really know how to resolve it. So I want to present the main framework that we're talking about here. It's called IFS, or parts work. And first of all, you know, I have taught psychology for 18 years at the college level. And I'm not teaching right now because I'm so busy doing this bright line eating thing. But, you know, I've taught psychology at all these different, I showed you all the institutions, whatever. I don't need to get into all that. But I really do want to take a moment to just do a nod to the history of perspectives on the mind and the brain, because that's my area of expertise. And I just have a story in my head that you might, if you don't know what parts work is, you might have a slight association of it that's not that positive, because it does say that each of us in our psyches have different parts, almost as if there's like, almost as if it's like multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, which frankly is way more sort of a household name, a household concept, a commonly understood idea than the notion of parts work, which is based on the healthy multiplicity of mind. Okay. The idea that the psyche naturally, the healthy psyche, has different parts that have different perspectives. And so what I want to do is I want to introduce you to the historical understanding of the mind that sort of sets the backdrop for internal family systems. Okay. So basically, there are two ways to conceive of a human being. I mean, along many dimensions, right? There's two kinds of people in this world: people who think there's two kinds of people and people who don't. But there's two ways to think about a human mind, okay? One is that the human mind is unitary. That when you ask, who are you? The answer is, what do you mean? Who am I? I'm me. I'm Joe. I'm a single person. I'm a single mind. I'm unified. And when I'm doing stuff that is kind of shooting myself in the foot, it's like bad on me. Like, what am I doing? I don't know. Sometimes I do that, right? Like I don't know. Sometimes I eat too much. Sometimes I watch too much porn. Sometimes I, yell at my kids. Sometimes I am mean to my partner. I don't know, whatever. Sometimes I do stuff I'm not proud of, whatever, right? But that's like, this is the approach, for example, that underlies, not explicitly, but sort of implicitly underlies, for example, cognitive behavior therapy, where it's like, here's you doing unhelpful stuff. Let's change your thinking. Let's change your behavior through these strategies. Now, cognitive behavior therapy is great, super evidence-based, and it's really, in my opinion, maybe the best approach for changing certain behaviors, right? Great. But there's another way to look at the mind, which is not new. And that is that the healthy mind is not unitary. It's multiple. And there's discrete, different sort of parts of us that have different perspectives or do different things. And when one part is sort of in charge, driving the bus, we're going to behave a certain way. And the best way to think about it when we're behaving in a whole different way is that there's another part of us that's in charge. Okay. And the challenge with that way of thinking is that multiple personality disorder, now known as dissociative identity disorder, is so prevalent and common that people think, okay, you're talking mental illness now, and I don't feel mentally ill, so I don't want to think of myself in that way, which is fair, but dissociative identity disorder takes this to an extreme that someone without that mental disorder doesn't ever experience. Someone without that mental disorder experiences so much basic harmony and overlap among their parts that unless you know to look for them, you wouldn't necessarily know that they're there, right? It's not like we need to, it's not like the person talking says, oh, I'm not Susan, I'm Sally, right? It's not like that. They're harmonious and not that different from each other. But what's important about this multiplicity of mind, this parts work perspective is, first of all, it's not new. And I'm going to tell you briefly, like, it's going to be pretty impressive, I think. Some of the people who've thought pretty deeply about this and have come to the conclusion that there must be multiple parts inside of each of us. So it's not new, but here's the kicker. It's more helpful. And I just want to say, all theories are wrong, but some are helpful, right? Like the world is we're just making stuff up here as scientists. All theories are wrong. None of them nails the bullseye. All theories are wrong, but some are helpful. Some have greater explanatory power. Some account for more of the data. Some have more utility when you build them into machines or systems. And this is the approach that is way, 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 way more helpful, especially if you're trying to change unwanted behaviors, especially if you're trying to heal at the deepest level. That's the perspective you want to be going from. It's the sharpest knife in the drawer. I'm telling you, it's the sharpest knife in the drawer. So who else has believed this? Well, for starters, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, Freud, Jung, the Bible, Nietzsche. Do I need to go on? Like, people who've thought about this really, really deeply have come to this conclusion. Lots and lots and lots of Native American tribes separately have come to this conclusion that there's 2 souls or 4 souls or 7 souls or whatever you want to call it. What else? Oh, by the way, neuroscience proves that that's actually the way the mind really works. Really, truly. The way consciousness works in the mind is distributed consciousnesses arriving separately from different areas of the brain that govern that sort of function or that sort of experience, which means that in primary motor cortex, right above this sulcus right here, in the frontal lobe, when you decide to raise your hand, that's the part of the brain that's generating the consciousness around you deciding to raise your hand, right? When you're driven to eat foods that you don't need to be eating. It's deep in the brain, hypothalamus and, limbic system-ish, that's generating the consciousness that generates the voice in your head that says, you deserve it. You worked so hard this week, and you should go out for nachos and beer with your friends because, really just think through the week you've had. You really deserve it. That's the part of the brain that's generating that internal voice in your own voice that's convincing you to eat that stuff because of dopamine downregulation and all that jazz. And if you just need even a little bit more evidence for a parts work perspective, it goes all the way back to the earliest written records. Like the first written records of a parts perspective is literally on the wall in Egypt in hieroglyphs. There's a man arguing with his own soul about whether he's allowed to commit suicide. And he says, I want to kill myself. And then he also says, no, we can't do that. And then he says, but please, I'll bury a lot of stuff in your tomb. I'll give you all the best gold. And then he says, no, we should not kill it. And then finally he resolves his argument with himself and decides not to commit suicide. And the part of him that he was arguing with says, I'm glad we've reached this resolution, all in hieroglyphs in Egypt, going all the way back. So a lot of smart people have thought about this super deeply and have come to the conclusion, and Socrates said it best. One mind cannot both want and not want at the same time. Therefore, we must all be at least two. And if you've ever sat there wanting a cookie and not wanting the cookie at the same time, you already understand parts. There's the food indulger part and there's the food controller part, right? You want the cookie and you don't want the cookie at the same time. Do you not? Well, then who is it that's wanting the cookie and not wanting the cookie? It's more helpful. It's more utilitarian. It's going to provide a faster road to better growth, better behavior change if you conceive of yourself as having parts. And if you really sink into that, it gets really fun because it's fun to learn about your parts and to personify them and to play games, making them into characters. And it gets really, really creative. It's just a fun journey. Okay. So that's the first thing, the history of parts work. Okay. Now we fast forward a little bit. And when we talk about IFS, I actually have slides for this. But what's important, and I talk usually about the neuroscience of what's going on in our brains, it's important to note that neuroscience is generating an experience in the mind that sounds like our own voice having, like we're changing our mind about what to eat. We're changing our mind and deciding to go out to eat. We're changing our mind and deciding to order this instead of that. It feels like we're changing our mind. That is a part taking over. And that's right at the intersection of where neuroscience intersects with psychology, essentially, of like, where does brain become mind? And it does it in parts. So the birth of internal family systems therapy happened in the 1980s when an academician and professor named Richard C. Schwartz, working at a Midwestern university, was doing research on people with bulimia. Richard Schwartz was a family systems practitioner. So he was a professor who specialized in family systems dynamics. So family systems, you've heard of this, right? It's like birth order, oldest child, middle child, youngest child. There's differences there. It's like family roles. Who's the scapegoat? Who's the peacekeeper? Who's the class clown? Always trying to lighten the dynamic by making everyone laugh. That's family systems. And a family systems practitioner believes that you can't really do good therapy with someone without pulling their family in and sort of making it a family healing, right? So Dick Schwartz was working with patients with bulimia, and he was doing a randomized controlled trial. And at the end of the intervention, with all the family systems therapy that he'd done, they had not reduced their binge purge episodes at all. No benefit, which stunned him because he was doing such good therapy with those people. And he was like, what's going on here? No benefit. I don't believe it. So he dove in and started asking the individuals about their binge purge episodes and interviewing them in a spirit of true bafflement, openness, and curiosity. And what he heard blew him away, because they started talking about the part of them that wanted to binge and the part of them that could control the binge for long periods of time without binging, but then the part of them that would take over and send them into oblivion, and then the part of them that would come in at that point and need to purge and get rid of that food, and then the part of them that could go back and live normally for a while without needing to binge again. And he said, it sounds like you have a family system inside of you. Like you have a whole family inside of you. And that's where the name internal family systems comes from. Okay. So Dick Schwartz did more work and discovered that all of these patients at some point would reach a point where they said they weren't talking from a part. It wasn't a binge part. It wasn't a control part. They were just talking as themselves. They're like, this isn't a part. This is just me. And he said every patient, no matter how much trauma, would get to that point where they were in themselves. So he called that self, highest self, authentic self, true self, centered self. Okay. So now I'm going to show you the structure of the human psyche according to internal family systems. And this is the most brilliant and simple architecture of the human mind, and the most helpful that I think has ever been conceived. Yay, Dick Schwartz. Well done. Here's the IFS, so internal family systems. Here's the model of the human psyche, the human mind, according to IFS. First of all, we've all got wounded parts. Okay, wounded parts. We know what these are. They might have been created in childhood when certain things happened. They might have been created more recently, but we have wounded parts. Then we have protective parts whose job it is to try to help us not be wounded, right? Some of those parts are managers. They try to get ahead of our wounding. They're trying to manage the world so that we don't get wounded. Now, they could be perfectionists. They could be controllers. They could be caretakers trying to placate and peacekeep and caretake everybody so that we don't get wounded, but they're trying to get ahead of our wounding so that we don't get wounded in the future. Okay. Then there are firefighter protective parts that are protecting us after we've already been wounded. So they might be, angry. They might be, hot-headed. They might be numbing parts. They might be eating parts, indulging parts, internet surfing parts, video game playing parts, right? And then we've got authentic self. And that's really at the core. And the 8 C's of authentic self are, you're in authentic self. You're not in a part when you're calm, you're clear, you're connected, you're compassionate, you're creative, you're confident, you're courageous, you're curious. That's what self feels like. And different people have different aspects of self that they live in more than others, right? That's fair. It doesn't have to be all of these all the time. But when you're that, you're in yourself. You're not being driven by a part. But here's the important part. When you're anything else, you're in a part. When you're anything else, when you're nervous, when you're harried, when you're anything other than these 8 C's, you're in a part. These slides are supposed to be in the other order. So here's some example of manager parts. The food controller, the inner critic, the caretaker, the rebel, the isolator. These are manager parts. And firefighter parts are the food indulger, which could be a seductive rationalizer, an impulsive child, a grandmother, or an isolator. I put as both. You could isolate as a managing strategy or as a firefighting response to being wounded. You could isolate in either way, right? Or a hothead would be an angry firefighter part. Okay. So one of the things that Everett and I are going to invite you to consider in this workshop is what part of you typically sabotages your weight loss efforts. Yeah, I just want to say this feels edgy for me. I need to say that. And I think the reason is that Well, I've been through this before, like way more than this. In being really candid about my own eating challenges, which feels like an edgy thing to do as someone who's like leading people to the path of freedom, and I feel like I'm supposed to be the perfect exemplar of like having it all together with my food and my weight, right? Um, and um, not that long after I started Bright Line Eating, I started struggling with my food again periodically. And I didn't ever gain back significant weight because I would get my food handled, but then I'd lose it again, and I'd get it handled, and I'd lose it again. And that included some pretty wicked binging in there. And that's like, just shy of 4 years. That merry-go-round was back in my life. Um, and I didn't know how to be authentic as a leader in Bright Line Eating except to tell everybody about it. So I crossed that path like majorly and like kind of got used to talking about my food struggles in public. But I've been bright consecutively now for almost 2 years, and I've really had nothing to say about my food except I'm finally bright again. Yay. And so this is the first time in almost 2 years that I've kind of pulled back the curtain and said, okay, here's what it currently looks like present day in my world with food and weight that's anything other than my food and my weight are handled. Hooray.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is I don't think about my food and my weight that much these days, but a little bit, and especially since COVID hit me like it hit a lot of people, where my cortisol went up and I put on a few pounds, a little bit. I'm still size 4, my clothes still fit and so forth, but I definitely put on a few pounds. So I'm way at the highest end of my range. And I had to like stretch my range even. I mean, I've had to stretch my range at various times to get pregnant. I had to put on a little weight, all these different things at different times in my life. In my bright body, I've just medically needed to be, a little bit heavier than I would ideally prefer. But still, it's all like size 4. It's still a range. Like I'm in the same clothes size. But I think all of us can probably relate to times when our pants are a little tighter and times when our pants are a little looser or whatever. But then also I'm in perimenopause, and I went on the pill to try to manage some really bad I have bad perimenopause in my family history. My father's mother, my grandmother, I never met her because she killed herself when she was 46. And for me, at the age of 45, I started to really suffer from really bad emotional swings, really bad sleeplessness, really bad. Like I got clinically depressed again, which I hadn't been in 17 years since I changed my eating for the better way back when, gave up sugar and flour and stuff. So, so I had depression again and all this stuff. So I went on the pill to try to stabilize my hormones, and the pill sent my cortisol sky high as well. And that was right during COVID as well. So I don't know if anyone knows, cortisol is a steroid. You can't lose weight when you have high cortisol. Like that's just not going to happen. That's a blanket broad brushstroke to paint with. But in my experience, it's really hard to help people lose weight when they're on prednisone, when their cortisol is high, that kind of thing. So, so for a while, like my weight had gone up a few pounds because I was on the pill, and then I couldn't take it off because my cortisol was high. So I'm 5'3.5", and my weight was hovering around 120 when I really like it to be around 110 to 115. And so fast forward, I'm off the pill now, and I'm doing a bioidentical hormone thing to try to manage that. Seems to be working. It's kind of early days, so it's hard to say. But I notice now that with super bright food, and I'm on the weight loss food plan because I am 5 pounds above the top of my ideal range, and I'd like to get that weight off. What I notice now is that when I'm bright that was all backstory. Here's the meat of the issue, Everett.
Hey, Susan,
Yeah.
why don't we, before we get into the meat, why don't I just do a brief grounding meditation?
Okay.
And that'll help you relax, and it'll help
I might cry
all of us. That's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, yeah, and really what you were just telling us is you had
mascara. Sorry.
Say that again.
It would suck because I'm wearing mascara if I actually cried.
Oh.
Right on my face. Just saying.
Well, and
Never
what you were
cry
just
on camera when you're wearing mascara.
and what you were just telling us is you have some parts activated around doing the session,
I do. Yeah, I have a
right?
judgment part that's like,
Yeah.
this is too vulnerable.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah. So and the meditation is just really designed to help you get into self and for all of us to just connect with our authentic self and bring that energy up for you. And so if you're able, I want to invite you to just close your eyes and take a breath.
These things are light from Venetian blinds there. I can't do anything about it.
Yeah. And just notice your thinking. Just notice what's on your mind. Notice what's on your mind without any need to change it or judge it. Notice your feelings and emotions. And notice your physical sensations. And take a deep, long breath into your belly. Take another deep, long breath into your belly. And take a deep, long breath into your heart. And take a deep, long breath into your heart. And take another deep, long breath into your mind. So just focus on your forehead or your third eye as you breathe. Take a deep, long breath into your mind again. And feel your lower back. Feel your feet. Yeah, and just in your own time, open your eyes. And I'm just going to create a little context around what we're doing. Is when you work with a practitioner, what you're going to see is kind of this is what I do in my one-on-one sessions. You kind of sit across from someone and they help you go inside and start to notice the parts that are present and then do what we call parts work. And it's kind of an interactive process. You can, in the training that we're going to be talking about later, I actually train you how to do this process with yourself. You can do it in a deep meditation. You can ask yourself these questions. You can do it with a buddy, with a peer. That's what I train you in. But it's just, and we always, in the beginning of our session, we're trying to connect into the authentic self. You'll notice a lot of parts work has to do with being connected to the authentic self. And as you watch this, there's about 1,500 people on the call. And each of you, by tuning into your authentic self, will create a field of healing energy for Susan as we do the session. And and what I want to invite you to do, Susan, as you talk about the issue, is just use parts language, which just means, say a part of me versus I or me.
Yeah.
And then we'll start to see the system of parts really clearly, really quickly.
Yeah, and we teach people how to do this in Bright Line Freedom, like with buddies and stuff. So this is like you'll learn how to do this. Yeah. I feel so much calmer. I was spinning there. Whew.
Sure.
It's a little edgy. It's a little edgy. And now I'm feeling a little excited and a little hopeful because you have always been able to create massive change for me in these little sessions that we do. You and I don't need to talk long, and it like something shifts in me. And this
Yeah.
would be such a big one to shift because this has been a tiresome bugaboo in my bright line eating experience all the way back. I mean, for the 7 years that bright line eating has existed and the 11 years that I did this before that, there have only been brief periods in those 18 years when I've had some sort of better solution to this issue than I have right now. And that's always been when I was working with a very doctrinaire and punitive sponsor in a 12-step program that would have absolutely sent me back to day one and been, super, it just wouldn't have. I was in a cage and couldn't move, sort of is how it
Right.
felt. Now I'm not in that cage, but I haven't figured out a way so I guess I have an indulger part um, that really likes to take comfort in restaurants. And I don't eat sugar or flour, and I always stick to my categories. So, like, if I don't currently have a grain at dinner, I don't order mashed potatoes, I don't order rice, I don't order anything that would be out of category boundary, but I manage to eat. So, what happens is a part of me, and I'm not sure if it's a part of me that's going offline or a part of me is actually actively working to sort of make me mentally fuzzy or something, so that when I'm at a restaurant or in some sort of potluck or some sort of party situation or something, basically anytime I'm not home weighing and measuring my own food, right? Or I have a
Right.
pack
Right.
of my food. If I'm in some sort of situation where I'm selecting on the fly what I'm going to eat or ordering from a restaurant, more often than not, I have a part of me that indulges a little bit, like not wildly, you know,
Mhm.
but eats things that are fattier or the quantities are up a little bit or something. It's there's always the part the part always maintains plausible deniability, right? Like, well, we get a lot of
Mhm.
vegetables. Who's to say that wasn't, but here I am like eating creamy kale, that's like drenched in cream and Parmesan cheese, right? And I'm
Right.
like
Right.
eating all this creamy kale, right? And that
Right.
part of me is like, well, we do get that's a vegetable, and we do get a lot of
Mhm.
vegetables if we're eating.
Mhm.
So the net is that if I'm eating out a fair bit and I got a family with 3 kids and, sometimes we want to go out to eat, like the net is that I will, my weight will pop up by 2 or 3 pounds. And then the next week, if I don't eat out, I can bring that back down just by being bright. And that's not a
Mhm.
problem. But what that means is that because I eat out or travel a fair bit, like I'm hovering at 120, and it's basically finish line anxiety, which we're going to talk about um, a little bit later. We're going to talk about finish line anxiety. I will when I talk about bright line freedom. Finish line anxiety is a version of like not finishing the job, like having some constellation of parts that work together so that for whatever reason, there's some degree of food and weight challenge still happening, right? And you're not actually in, like your spot on goal body and, at your right size I'm just up that much, right? Like it's like a 5 to 8 pound
Mhm. So,
thing.
so what I'm hearing, so
Yeah.
first of all, I'm hearing a part you haven't named yet, but you have a part that's judging you about this issue.
Yeah, I
You
do.
shouldn't be, you're not being precise enough when you eat out.
Yeah.
Bad, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I do. And that's a
yeah.
holdover from that old 12
Oh,
step.
sure, sure.
Sure.
But let's name that part, right? Like,
Yeah.
and we call that the food controller. And when it's the part of you that wants you to be spot on,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And let's I want you to notice how that part's talking to you.
Well, I can't do that because I have to go
Yeah,
inside.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, go ahead and relax. Take a breath. Take a breath. How does your food controller talk to you when you're not being precise enough in restaurants?
So the first thing the food controller wants to say is that it takes umbrage being called apart. It thinks it's the most holy righteous self.
Oh, sorry. How about self with the small s? No.
I mean, really, that part thinks that it has the direct line to God and to all that is right and righteous in this world. And Susan Peirce Thompson
Yeah.
should never eat a bite off plan that is in any way anything other than that part.
Yeah.
That, yeah. That part thinks
Yeah.
it knows the right way, not with a lowercase r, with a capital R. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you feel towards that part just in this moment,
Amused.
right? Yeah. Yeah. See if you can allow an image to form of this kind of this part feels a little moral to me, this food
Yeah.
controller, right?
Hmm. It this part is like it looks like it's got vestiges of all of the society knows best kind of females that I have encountered throughout my life. And I went to a private girls' school with uniforms where those and I was poor and my parents were hippies and they wore their pressed Guess jeans and their kids and whatever their outfit was, but it was like I don't know. So she's wearing she's very slender and she's wearing white jeans and um she's middle-aged but still quite attractive and she's got kind of brown hair down into a bob with just like a nice little curve right there with the hair and kind of the Jennifer Aniston kind of haircut and you know wearing some sort of, I don't know, fitted blouse shirt with buttons that
Right.
shows the figure and you know she'll just raise an eyebrow or whatever. She's judging. Um she's not saying a whole lot. She's judging. Just sitting there
Yeah.
going, you know, really, Susan?
Yeah. And how do you feel towards her in this moment as she stands there and judges you?
Rebellious and dismissive and kind of like, yeah, get over yourself, woman.
Okay, yeah, some other
Yeah.
parts showing up, right?
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
that's a part.
Yep. Yep. Ask her, and this is what we do in parts work. If you haven't seen this before, we dialogue with our parts. Ask her how she's trying to help you, what her role is from her perspective.
She she is stunned that I need to ask that question. Like she's like just trying to help you live everything you want in life, like free and not worried about the food anymore. And have you forgotten all of the pain associated with food that you have been through? And I'm just here to, I'm upholding, I'm upholding everything that you want in life that you need to have in order to have a good functioning life. Like, what do you even mean? What's my role? I mean,
How
she's
to,
got a point.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's probably brought lots and lots of gifts into your life.
I mean, that's interesting because the part that feels like rebellious and dismissive of
Yeah.
her is like, excuse me, that lady did not do that. I don't know what I have this other part that's in the book. Like
Yeah.
that food controller part that's the judger. She's not even a food
Uh-huh.
controller. She's the judger.
She's the
So Everett,
judger.
she's not the food controller. She's the
Yeah.
judger. She's the
She's the
moral
judger.
judger of
Hmm.
like, if you don't dot that I and cross that T in that restaurant, you are not as good a human being, Susan.
Yeah,
And I'm like, and
good.
then I have this other part that's like, fuck you, lady. Like,
Yep.
really?
Yep. So let's just notice that. Let's just notice that. Yeah. And so let's just ask her to step aside. I just wanted to bring her into awareness.
Can I put her somewhere? I feel like I need to like
Sure.
put her
Yeah,
somewhere.
put her
Where
in
can I put
another
her?
room. Just put her outside in the backyard or yeah, and so let's find a memory of maybe that moment. The moment when this part gets activated. Maybe it's when you're sitting down in the restaurant and you pick up the menu and you're deciding, or maybe it's before you get to the restaurant. Like when does this particular indulger show up?
Yeah, it shows up when like well in advance of arriving at the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this moment of checking how I'm going to handle this restaurant situation. And this part gets really happy and excited. Really happy and excited. And there's this flood actually of well-being and release and
Mm-hmm.
ease that comes because this part knows that I'm not going to break my bright lines, but I'm just going to get something yummier and it's just going to be a good
Mm-hmm.
night. That's the way this part feels.
There it is. There it is. And see if you in your memory can even notice the feeling of it in your body. Like where do you feel all that as a sensation when this part shows up?
It's like all in my chest and my torso. It's just like a
Mm-hmm.
spreading warmth, like a spreading goodness
Mm-hmm.
of like, woo. Like
Mm-hmm.
the feeling of like we're going to a party tonight, or like, you know, like,
Yes.
or like I'm going out with all my best friends or something. Just some sort of,
Yeah.
it's not
It's excitement.
it's not over the top, you know what I
Right,
mean? It's
right.
not like,
Yeah.
you know, but it's just like warmth and goodness. And I mean, God bless. It's like, it's what all the TV commercials want you to feel when you think about their products, right? It's just like, it's
Right.
entertainment, it's release, it's a good time. It's like, yeah. But that's how
Yeah.
that part feels. Like, oh, good. And she also feels like she doesn't get to come out and play much, you know?
Mm.
So she feels like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's my turn. That's how she
Mm-hmm.
feels like, oh, it's my turn.
Mm-hmm.
I get, yay. Like this little time is for me.
Mm-hmm. How old
Oh,
does she feel to you?
you know, I've met her before. I don't know if you'll remember this parts work session, but she's in her early 20s. We met her, gosh, Everett, this was a parts work session that you did with me. This was that amazing session that we did in like early 2018 or something like that, where I had a food controller and a food indulger. At that time, I couldn't. This same part was resulting in me breaking my lines for
Right,
years, and she'd
right.
be like, "Oh, you're so stressed. Have a cookie." And in this session, I met her. So she's super good looking, but like in sort of a, she's dumb, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like she just has, she's as dumb as a stone, this one.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got no intellect, and she just, all she thinks is, oh good, like I'm just gonna feed you. And she's in her early 20s and she's
Mm-hmm.
cute and she just wants to give me food because,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked her why, and she says, because it just, you seem kind of stressed and I think you just really could use,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know, maybe just a little, you know, put some cheese on that chili and it'll just be better. Like she's
Mm-hmm.
just, so that's her. This is
Yeah,
her.
that's her. There she is.
There she is. She's like, oh,
Yeah,
good.
yeah. And
And
how do you
so,
feel towards her just in this moment?
compassionate, maternal. Like, I
Yeah.
get why she's doing that. And I just feel
Yeah.
like, I get it, sweetie. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah, it makes sense. Her strategy makes sense. She's just trying to
Yeah.
bring a little brightness and light and ease into my world. And I mean, there's a way in which I sort of feel like, and it's kind of working.
Mm-hmm.
Like she stopped actually making me eat off my, or, I'm not eating off my lines. This is a follow-on conversation of the conversation. I haven't really talked with her since that session in
Mm-hmm.
2018. She's been behaving since then. I asked her to
Mm-hmm.
stop eating that. I explained to her the consequences and she was like, oh, really? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, it actually causes a lot of problems when I eat that cookie. You have no idea. And since then, she like lives within the boundaries. It's just
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
like,
So
well,
it's good you're reconnecting with her, right? She's just you've just found a little loophole in
yeah,
restaurants,
she's been
right?
looking in that loophole. Just
Yeah.
for one time, she's like, oh, good, we're gonna go out to eat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just send her. And how are you feeling towards her in this moment?
Yeah, compassionate
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Send some loving attention to her.
Before I do that, can I just point out for anyone
Please.
watching?
Please.
Notice that compassion is one of the 8 C's. So Everett just checked that I can be here in my highest self, and she's a part.
Yeah.
But I'm not blended with her. I'm not
Yeah.
feeling like I am her, and I'm not another part that's mad at her, judging her,
Mm-hmm.
or feeling any other kind of way. I'm actually in myself, and she's the part over here. That's an important stage to get to in the session,
Mm-hmm.
where we're
Yep.
unblended, and
Yep.
I'm me. I'm myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm my centered, highest, authentic self, and she's the
Mm-hmm.
part. And we know that because I feel compassion for her. You can't feel compassion if you're not in yourself.
Yep.
Really, is that true, Everett?
Yeah, that is true. That's one of the markers. Yeah, we check to see if and what Susan's kind of describing is there's a process here.
Yeah.
That I'm in that we train you in actually.
Yeah. It's
in
like
Bright Line
a sheet
Freedom.
of paper.
Yeah.
It's like some bullet points. It's like he's just going through the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So just send her some loving attention from that compassion.
Should I ask her to talk with me?
Yeah. Well, ask her, what is she afraid will happen if you don't go through the loophole? If you don't have.
If she doesn't do her job? Like,
yeah.
Okay. She's afraid I might not get enough to eat.
Mm-hmm.
She's afraid I won't have a good evening,
Mm-hmm.
that I won't have a good time.
Yeah.
She's afraid I'll be bored.
Mm-hmm.
And she's afraid of like a painful, stretching, like white knuckling experience through the meal that I used to experience when I was like wanting more different foods, and like that wanting was like a relentless thumping, but I was like shutting it down and shutting it down, but I spent the whole meal in that process of like saying no to that urge.
Yeah. 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 And ask her. So she's doing a lot. She has a lot of motivation. Right? There's a lot of motivation there. Do you feel
she wants me to know that, she's been handling restaurants and they're filled with a lot of ease. And then I kind of want to let her know that, yeah, but not really. I don't enjoy being that full afterwards. And, there's no self-loathing afterwards or anything, but there is like a little twinge of, there's a little twinge afterwards of like, suboptimal. It just feels like, there I go again. Oh well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not great. I would rather not do it.
Yeah. So here I want to go through a little exercise with you and her.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do is have you visualize maybe the last time you ate at a restaurant and notice what it feels like when you're blended with her in the restaurant. Right? And just I want you to get that felt sense of like you've got the menu and you're blended with her and you're feeling her feelings.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. David and I went out to Mexican food just recently and I ordered vegetarian fajitas, which with no rice, because I'm not eating grain at dinner right now. And the food arrived and it probably wasn't enough black beans. And I got this feeling of like, oh, there she was. There she was. I got this feeling of like, I could order more beans. And then she double checked, like, is that against the rules? That's not against the rules. That's not enough black beans. And it's like this, it's like a Twitter-pated feeling, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
She just doesn't do the like less is more, when in doubt, leave it out. She just, anytime there's any gap in the anything, she like, and then fast forward a little bit more in the meal, the side of beans came. This was refried beans. And that plus the black beans was too much, but I ate them all. Like there's some sort of feeling of like, and I don't know, that's where I think, Everett, there might be some other part, some sort of obfuscating part that's like, it's maybe the oblivionator or something.
Well, let's try. So now what I want you to do is imagine walking into that restaurant again, but you're going to leave her outside. You're going to consciously, before you open that restaurant door, you're going to say, okay, honey, you're not coming in here with me. You're not, and just imagine her literally leaving your body and wandering around the mall or wherever you are.
She was like, humph. And then I gave her a cell phone to play with, and she was like, "Oh, good." She's playing video games on the cell phone.
And then I want you to continue now to feel what it feels like walking into the restaurant in your authentic self. And sitting down, looking at the menu, and notice the difference. Just describe it if you can. How does it feel different sitting down and ordering?
Yeah. It's really, well, I remember looking at that menu when I was blended with her, and I was dizzied and confused because there was like so many options, and a lot of it sounded good, and a lot of it could be a bright meal. This time I'm noticing I feel a lot clearer. I'm really looking more for just the really clean option. The salads actually are looking a lot better to me. I just got scared. I fast forwarded in the meal, imagined the food arriving, noticing that the beans weren't enough, and I had a fear.
Yeah, there's
that. Well, the fear that leaving her outside isn't good enough. Like here's the thing: is I've been kind of this like fudging in restaurants thing is like, I've been doing this for half my life. You know what I mean? That's a long time. Or whatever it's been, 17, whatever it's been. So I have a fear that like, oh, it can't be that easy that just leaving her outside with a cell phone is going to solve it. I mean,
well, let's notice you order the meal and then the meal comes back and it looks like it's not enough food, right? It feels like maybe that's the trigger, like, oh, there's not enough. And then notice the part that's triggered.
Yeah, it's a whole different part.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole different part. I don't know this part really. This is a it's like it's like it's almost like the feeling of like you just walked into your house and your furniture's been stolen or something. It's like there's
Mm-hmm.
maybe not enough food. It never happens when I just weigh and measure my own food at home because
Right.
that's enough
Right.
food. I mean,
Right.
I believe that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's like maybe that's not enough food.
There's fear there, right? Like she's like the
Yeah,
party girl, right? She's like,
yeah,
woohoo, we're gonna have a good time. But this is fear.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
fear. Where do you feel that fear in your body?
Like on the left side, right above my gut. It's
Hmm.
like
Yeah. 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 Allow an image to form of that part.
I have an image. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a cartoon guy and he's got a monocle and he's British maybe and he's like, by Jove, I think this isn't enough food. Like he's just opened the door and he's like, oh yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel towards him just in this moment?
Well, I feel scared too, so I guess I'm blended with him.
Yeah. 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 Just move him out of your body and a little distance from you.
He just like now he just looks so sort of skinny and like harmless, and he's kind of like, okay, now what? And he just looked funny
Yeah.
because he's just a little cartoon guy. He's just
Right.
okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And ask him what his role is. How's he trying to help you?
I mean, he's trying to make sure I don't starve.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask him how old he thinks you are.
He says he has no idea. I'm just a human
Mm-hmm.
body to him.
Mm-hmm.
He has no idea how old I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you feel towards him in this moment?
Um, kindly, compassionate. I
Yeah.
mean, as soon as I moved him out, I sort of realized I'm not worried about starving. Like, I have no problem with hunger.
Hunger is not an
Hunger is
emergency.
not an emergency. And yeah,
Ask him what his role is. How's he trying to help you?
he's trying to help me get every morsel of food that I'm entitled to.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I want to invite you to, just in case he doesn't know, show him the fullness of who you are as an adult
Mm.
and the resources you have.
So, yeah, I'm taking him around my house. I'm opening my refrigerator, showing him all the food in there.
Mhm.
Okay, I just censored myself, so I'll just say what I was really doing because I was afraid that people out there would be like, "Oh, well, I'm not Susan Peirce Thompson. How will that work for me?" But I opened the cupboard in my office, showed him all the books I've written, all the languages they're published in. I showed him the framed doctoral dissertation and master's degree and NISOD National blah blah teaching award on the blah blah blah. And I'm going to take him upstairs. Like I'm just showing it. Like, dude, I got this. We don't need your help with the 2 ounces of black beans. Like, really. I'm also, I'm explaining to him that in a restaurant, when he helps me get every morsel of food I'm entitled to, it usually results in me eating way too much food on the other end. Like I would really rather undercut by a little than order a whole extra thing and then be faced with all that food sitting there and then end up eating more of it than I wish I did. Like that's just not a good approach. So I'm just explaining to him that his strategy is problematic. I'm just asking him, would it be okay with you if you didn't barge in restaurants and order me more food? Would it be all right with you if I just made that decision? He just saluted to me and walked away.
There you go.
I should probably do that with her too. She's sitting outside the Mexican restaurant right now.
Yeah, why don't you go out and talk with her?
She's really sad. Like right away, she's really sad.
Yeah.
I'm finding myself wanting to run an experiment with her.
Okay.
Like, could we just give ourselves to the end of 2021? Could we just, because her role is so important. Like, I really do enjoy evenings when I go out to eat and I tie one on with my extra oily, my extra creamy kale or whatever it is that I order. And like, I believe that I've seen it. I will be happier without that overall, without a doubt. But I kind of want to prove that to her and I want to prove that to myself too. Like, let's just run an experiment. Let's try it till the end of the year. I'll stay close to her. She can totally help me have fun in other ways. Ooh, she's wanting another job. She's wanting the job of like helping me have fun with whoever I'm with at the restaurant. Like being lighthearted and goofy and present and playful and fun. She's like, let's just have fun. A little more fun. I like that idea because I'm pretty serious, actually. I mean, you know, whatever. A little bit. Yeah, I think she wants that role, and we'll just practice just keeping the food really simple. God, I freaking teach people this. This is okay. The judge part's
There's
back.
The judge, right? Just notice.
All right, lady in your white pants, you can go back outside. Go to your synagogue. Go to your lunch, your coffee with friends. Go have tea. Go have peppermint tea with your friends. You're dismissed. Yeah. Ooh, that judge part. Yeah, we'll just try like ordering really simply, keeping the food really dialed in, and just see if we don't actually have more fun on these evenings. I mean, and I am maybe, I mean, I don't know. My weight, whatever. My weight is fine, but I really do enjoy living at the lighter side of my range. Like I really do. It's like, and I'll be way more likely to get that pull up in this year or sometime soon. You know, those 5-8 pounds, whatever, they make a big difference when you got
Right.
These arms trying to do a pull-up.
Well, and it feels like to me also what you're dealing with is the insane calorie load of restaurant food now, right? You're just dealing with that. Just that, but naturally, if you just were to eat restaurant food the way they want to serve it with you, it is so calorie rich now, right?
Well, and it's also really inflammation producing, right?
Uh-huh.
And I have pain, right? This is the perimenopause thing. I just learned this, that like joint pain and muscle pain is like it's a thing. And I have like this chronic pain in my hip and my lower back right now on my left side. I don't know, it's been there for about a year and a half, ever since 2 years, ever since this perimenopause started.
So I want to do one last visualization with you where you go into a restaurant, could be different, pick a different restaurant.
Yeah. Okay.
And you're conscious as you're entering the restaurant, you maybe notice whether these parts have shown up.
Everett, here's the thing. There, I got scared, like something there. Oof. And I don't know if this is true. So a part of me has the story that I'm way too busy and heavy laden and burdened and distracted, the kids, the this, the company, the that, whoever, to have anything whatsoever to do in a restaurant beyond just go in, order, and eat and get out. There's the part of me, and again, this obfuscator part that like keeps me from really being online.
So there's a third part.
Kind of thing. Okay.
That's your taskmaster. You have a part, I call it the pusher, right? Your pusher's like, oh, don't make her think about her indulger for a second before she walks into a restaurant. She's already overloaded, right? But there's a part of you that's just pushing, right?
I don't know. That doesn't feel quite like what it is.
Okay, let's stay with it. Just notice.
I could check to see if it's Lainey. So for everyone out there, and Everett, in case you don't remember, I have a general manager part. She's a manager, she's a controller, but her job, she's like a project manager, and her job is to keep my life organized, and she gets frazzled sometimes. Yeah. So it could be Lainey, who's like, we can't, Everett. There's no way to add consistently that thing. Like, you have no idea the things that we have to add into our life. Like, no, Susan's weight is fine, and we're not adding a thing. We're not adding that thing. Yeah, I think it's Lainey.
Yep. The thing I like also that you just surfaced, which is usually part of this scenario that we haven't touched into, is the underlying stress underneath the indulging.
Yeah.
Right. That looks like that just popped its head up right there. To make this more general, it's bookending, right? Like this is what we do all the time when dealing with resistance. We all have problem areas. We just have a problem area, right?
Yeah.
And so we get really aware of like, well, when does that start? When does that end? Right? And so a good point for you is when you're walking into a restaurant, or maybe even the first time you start thinking about it, is to just look for these parts. You're like, oh, there she is, right? And then just unblend from them. You could visualize sending her off to, you could remind her that you're going to have a great conversation. You could remind the guy that hunger is not an emergency. You're not going to starve if you don't have the exact portion control. It's about being in relationship with these parts now around this issue.
Okay.
Right. And then getting the new habit in place, getting your 21 days or a month of really being in self when you sit down in the restaurant consciously, and my coaching is to make sure you're not in the judge, right? You're not in the other side of the issue, that you're just in self. You're just, you're precise because you need to be precise right now. And you'll get the results from the precision because that's how it works. And, but but to make a little vow to yourself that you're going to be conscious now in restaurant. And this session's going to be so useful to everyone watching it, because everyone deals with this. Restaurants are a little loophole, right? Like, oh, can't weigh and measure here, right? So I think a lot of us have this kind of indulger that wants to push the boundaries. Those of us that are keeping bright lines, maintaining bright lines. And then do a little push, maybe, and this you could do outside of this session is have a conversation with Lainey, right? Because it may be that you are stressed, and so that's something that was unexplored in what we were just doing. You are stressed, and so the food is a balm for that. And that's just good information for you. Right? Like, oh, there's some place I'm unconsciously treating my stress with food, and then just be strategic about that, or check in. One of the things I like to tell people is when the cravings start, whenever you have a craving, notice how you're feeling. Whenever you have a craving, just notice how you're feeling. And a lot of times there's a correlation. You're stressed, right? And so maybe that's something also that will have come out of this session for you, is this awareness of like, oh, maybe I'm a little bit more stressed than I realize. And that's also what's driving the restaurant's situation.
Yeah. So here's what's interesting is I'm not that stressed, but it is a habitual way of handling a certain situation that this part of me thinks creates more excitement, more ease, more whatever. And I remember back when I was breaking my lines a while back, and in working with you, I realized, and it was like just the biggest realization ever, that a big binge was the only time that I would ever give myself several consecutive hours off.
Right.
The only time. I did not have to, and I was stressed back then. Holy smoke doodles, I was stressed. And after that session, I started just naturally, it just happened. I started giving myself big chunks of time. Like I would feel the stress build, and instead of going to binge, I would just be like, I'm taking the evening off and I'm taking a bubble bath. And it would be kind of the same kind of like hanging the do not disturb sign on the doorknob kind of thing, as if I just dove back into the food. And David would know, like, well, you can't do anything with her now. She's eating until she's done eating. And so it's that I think this part of me is really going to be excited now to create her little conversation and fun. And, it doesn't have to be with the food. Like that's not, it's not even the best way to do it. It's not even the best way to have ease and fun and whatever.
Bring the joy in another way.
Right? Yeah. Like flirting, good conversation, jokes, deep connection is like way better than creamy kale. It just is. Like it's So all right, my dear, I think I feel complete. Thank you for that. And I'm excited to see what restaurants look like now.
So this work that I'm going to be sharing with you and what I teach in Bright Line Freedom is really come out of thousands and thousands and thousands of hours now of working with people doing Bright Line Eating, and thousands of people that have actually come through my Bright Line Eating programs. So there's a lot behind this. And we started to talk about these parts in Susan's session, right? We talked about the indulger. And I'm just going to list some of the resistant parts that show up in BLE. And by resistant parts, they're the parts that just basically would rather you not keep your lines. It's kind of that simple. And the rebel is, for some people, a big part that shows up that just says no in different forms. The indulger, you got a taste of working with Susan's indulger, right? The part of you that wants to eat what it wants to eat, or eat off plan, or eat in another way. The isolator, which is the part of you that tries to keep you isolated, that tries to keep you from reaching out for support. And the caretaker, and the caretaker is the part of you that would rather take care of others over yourself, would rather take care of others over yourself. and then the inner critic. And each of these parts comes up in different forms of isolation. And before parts work, it's all just kind of a blur what's going on inside, right? Like, you know, you're feeling different things and you've got a craving and then you've got a judgment. But as you notice when I was working with Susan, we took something that to a lot of people might have been a blur, right? Like, oh gosh, whenever I go into restaurants, I end up eating more than I want to eat, right? And we broke it down. Like we started to realize like, oh, there's really something specifically going on inside of Susan. There's specific parts that are coming up. And I took her inside and we started to explore those parts. And we started to do parts work. So resistant parts are the parts of you, and this was why this way I use IFS with bright line eating is so effective, because basically we can notice whenever you resist the program that it's a part that's doing it, and it's very easy to see where to look. Right? Like, oh, well, look right there. For Susan, as soon as she's on the way to the restaurant, that indulger pops up and starts getting her all excited, right? Your indulger may pop up when you drive by a fast food restaurant. It may pop up when you're at the checkout line in the grocery store. It may pop up any number of places, you know. So these are the resistant parts. And in Bright Line Freedom, I go into a lot more detail about these parts. We don't have time in this workshop. The other thing you're probably noticing is that this is complex, what we're teaching, right? Like, it takes a little while to get this. That's why we have a 15-week course on it. And when you're new to it, it's a new way of thinking about yourself in the world. So these are 5 of the resistant parts that might be showing up in your program. And then these are common types of resistance. Common types of resistance. Rejecting and resisting the entire program, right? Like, that's the problem of getting started. That's the problem of getting started. And that might be the rebel. You know, if you're finding yourself, well, I wanna do BLE, but some part of me just won't allow me to. That might be a rebel. Some of us have a resistance to measuring and weighing, right? It's funny when I run into people that have that resistance, it's a lot of times they're very vehement about it. Like, they hate the idea of doing that. And, but again, there's a part there, right? A lot of times that's a rebel also. Right? If that feels too controlling, too measured. Eating in secret. I bet if you have food addiction, you know what I'm talking about. And that's the isolator and the indulger, right? You know, there are many people that their program looks really good to the rest of the world, but they do all their breaks in private on their own. Avoiding asking for, and as I name these different types of resistance, see which ones you have. See which ones you have. Avoiding asking for and accepting support. It was interesting in the early years of doing BLE, I would get people who were coming and they'd be like, oh, I'm having trouble holding to my lines, and you know, I can't really string that many days together. And I would just ask them like, oh, well, what kind of support do you have? And they'd be like, oh, I'm kind of a do-it-yourself person, you know, I'm not really a joiner, like, you know, Facebook's too complex, or, you know. And basically what I would notice is they don't have any support, you know. And so what I would work on with them is the parts of them that are keeping them from reaching out for support. So we'd work on the part of them that was intimidated to get online to ask to be part of a mastermind group. And then many of those people, once they simply got their support into place, were fine. All I had to do is help them get through the resistance to getting support. And once they got the support, then they were in. And the part that is avoids support is called the isolator. And that's a part that I'm an expert in. I actually have isolated the isolator in this work. No one else really was ever talked about that before this work. Boy, here's one you may be familiar with. Believing that bright line eating is impossible for you. Believing BLE is impossible for you, the inner critic. And it's really, you know, we've all had so much failure, right, in our weight loss journeys. You know, in fact, you know, for many of us, it's kind of all been failure until BLE. And so we have a part that doesn't want us to get our hopes up. It just doesn't want us to get our hopes up because it doesn't want us our hopes to be dashed. And so, you know, many people have a persistent voice telling them that they're, you know, they're watching the weight melt off everyone around them, but that somehow they're different, somehow they're special, somehow they're the one that this isn't going to work for. But the good news is if you work the program, it works. And there's so much evidence of that. So believing BLE is impossible for you. Giving into cravings, that's the indulger, right? And in the work I did with Susan was very classic indulger work, right? Like just kind of notice, you know, finding out what the issue is, right, that she wants to work on, and then noticing that it was the indulger, and then really getting nuanced in our understanding of how the indulger works, Evening eating is also a big issue that I found with people, and that's the indulger. You know, the other thing, you know, at least I do with my clients is, you know, a lot of people can do BLE, but they have problem areas. And what you do is you just focus on each problem area one at a time. And then you work through it and you fix it, and then it's no longer a problem. And then at a certain point, you've worked through all your problem areas, and you're in, and your program is flowing along seamlessly, and the weight is coming off. So you just have to be unstoppable. You just have to keep going. Resisting following the food plan, You know, that could be the indulger, it could be the rebel. You know, and if you're new to parts work, right, like you can start to, I'm naming some of these parts so that you can start to notice what's going on when you're resisting. When you're resisting, there's a part present, and you're going to be able to start to name it. There's a part that isn't really a resistant part called the food controller, so I'm not talking about it here. But many times we have a food controller that's fighting with our food indulger, right? We have the food indulger that's wanting to eat whatever it wants, and then we have a part that wants to control that. And many times that part controls it with very shame-based language. And you can get caught in these shame-based binging cycles. And that's the controller-indulger polarization. White knuckling, right? Susan mentioned that in her session. The feeling that you're doing BLE, but it's really hard, right? It's really hard. The thing about white knuckling is usually what's happening is you have some sort of stress going on in your life, and it's triggering your indulger. And because your indulger is being triggered, your food controller is triggered to control the indulger. And the food controller might successfully be controlling the indulger, but it takes a lot of effort. And so if you ever feel like you're white knuckling BLE, then the thing you need to look for is the underlying stress that you're not addressing. Because once you address the underlying stress and relieve that, then the indulger won't be getting triggered anymore, and then the controller won't be getting triggered, and you'll be able to be in a place of ease in your program. Going with the group and eating off plan, right? Like this can be the caretaker, you know. This is a kind of common thing in the beginning for people that had resistance with BLE. Is it's hard for them to stay on plan in a group because they don't want to stand out, you know, or they don't want people to feel awkward. You know, I think many times it looks like the caretaker, but many times it's just an indulger that's just using that as an excuse. But again, if that's one of your problem areas, you just focus on it from a parts perspective, get to know the parts, you know, start to build a relationship with them, and then build a little strategy like I was doing with Susan. Like, what's your strategy now for whenever you go out? And being someone now that has been consistently bright for a long time, I can absolutely tell you that you don't have to take care of anyone. You can still eat the way that you want to eat, and no one cares. And no one cares. And if someone did care, that's their issue, not yours. And then using others' food needs as an excuse to avoid the plan. There's another kind of caretaking, right? Like, you know, or this is the thing of like, you know, grandma hands you her fresh baked whatever, you know, and you feel like if you don't take it or if you don't eat it, you're going to hurt her feelings, right? Like that's the caretaker. And so these are like some of the top common types of resistance. You may have your own version of this. You may have your own version of this. But again, this just shows how I'm so glad we did that session, Susan. It's like so great to be able to refer back to it right now. That, you know, the thing that's so beautiful about parts work is it enables you to understand in a really detailed sense what's going on underneath the surface. And again, before parts work, it's just kind of a blur. But after you start to really get to know those parts and build relationships with them, you can really transform things. You can really get back on track. So there are what I call the 5 gates of resistance. And these are really places that people get stuck. And they get stuck and they get waylaid, right? And if you can be aware of them and plan for them and notice them, then you can not get stuck. You know, the first gate is just getting started. Just getting started. You know, I had my own version of it. It took me 6 weeks to decide to do a boot camp. And then the first boot camp I didn't even finish, right? And then it was like 5 months later that I finally did another boot camp and I really was all in, right? So, you know, for many of us, getting started in BLE is bumpy, right? But again, it's just being unstoppable. So just, you know, but just notice, is that one of the gates of resistance that you're stuck at, right? And if it is, you could do some parts work. You could just sometimes when we realize we're at a gate, we just act. We're like, oh, I'm stuck at one of those gates Everett was talking about. Okay, I'm just going to get started. You know, and getting started for you might be doing a boot camp or a 14-day challenge, or it might be reading the book. But like getting your program started. And it's always highly recommended to do a boot camp because the level of support in getting started with BLE is just enormous there. You know, and if you can't do that for some reason, at least do the 14-day challenge. And but that will get you started. One of the other gates of resistance is surrendering to the food plan and keeping food simple. Surrendering to the food plan and keeping food simple. You know, it took you a long time to build up the disordered eating habits that you have now, or you had at one point. Like that actually happened over days, months, and years. And it may seem shocking to think about changing them all of a sudden. But the truth is, once you change them and those days, months, and years go by, the new food plan becomes normal. I sent a picture of I live in Maui, and we keep all our veggies and fruits on the counter. And I posted this picture to Facebook a couple of months ago of just all the incredible healthy whole food that we eat in Brightline Eating. It's so gorgeous, so gorgeous. You know, we do not deny ourselves a pleasure in this program. And so surrendering to the food plan and keeping food simple might be another gate. That might be some place that you've gotten stopped, because some part of you is attached to some way of eating that's different. Dealing with others' disappointments around your new way of eating. This is really a caretaking thing, right? You know, and it, you know, in the beginning, it's an issue, you know, especially those of us that don't like to stand out or don't want to be noticed or don't want to be judged. You know, it's a thing to become a Brightline eater. You know, it's like becoming vegan or something, right? It's like a genuinely different way that you're eating than the people that eat around you. And it's going to show on your body, right? You know, you ever met someone from CrossFit, like that does CrossFit? They look amazing because they do CrossFit, right? Like that same thing happens in Brightline Eating. There's just this glowing health that we start to radiate because we do Brightline Eating, and pretty soon we're in a bright body. And you know, Susan talked about all the, you know, so you get that. You get to be the one that has all that radiance and joy, and you know, and let people be disappointed if they're going to be disappointed. But again, that would be working with your caretaker. But notice, is that a gateway that you're stuck at? Is that a gateway to are you doing Brightline Eating, but whenever you go out with friends, you eat whatever they eat because you don't want to stand out? That's a gate. One of the other gates of resistance is a resistance to getting program buddies. Resistance to getting program buddies. You know, typically if there's addiction involved, external support is required. If there's addiction involved, external support is required. And many of us that have failed in the past at releasing weight was because we were trying to do it on our own. And since there was an addiction involved, we weren't able to. We always had to come back to the addiction. You know, this is why recovery programs are so effective at helping people release addictions, because the more support that you have, and this really plays out in Brightline Eating. And Brightline Eating buddies are special kind of friends. You know, if when I describe my own struggle with food at the beginning of this call, if that made you feel like more connected to me, right? Because you also have struggled with food. That's what it's like when you get buddies, right? Here's a person who has walked the same path as you and is having the same struggle as you, and is trying to, has the same goals. And you know, people get buddies in mastermind groups, and they get a new kind of friend than maybe they've had before, that are so special. The kind of friend that supports you in your health is so special. So notice if that might be a gate, right? Just resistance to getting program buddies. And then feeling like you don't belong, right? Feeling like you don't belong. I remember at one of the conferences, I asked, there were like 450 people in the room, and I asked everyone in the room to raise their hand if they felt like they didn't belong in the room. They didn't belong in the room. And almost every person raised their hand. And then Susan even came out from behind the drapes and raised her hand. this feeling like you don't belong can be,
Remember that? That was so
yeah, right?
amazing. Remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
suffocating.
That was the first time we offered bright line eating, wasn't it?
Bright line freedom. Yep,
Bright line freedom.
yep,
Yeah, I remember that. That was
yep.
super powerful.
Do you,
I'm curious,
yeah.
Everett, do you think that doing bright line freedom before doing the boot camp, let's imagine that there's someone here who has been, has heard of bright line eating for the first time a long time ago and has kind of checked it out and has not hopped into the 14-day challenge or the boot camp yet, or did the 14-day challenge maybe and really never did a boot camp, never really committed. Do you think doing bright line freedom first would help?
I think it depends on how lit up they are by this content. Right? Like if someone's watching this and they're like, oh, yes. Right? Like, oh, yes, this is what I've been missing. Then I would jump into Bright Line Freedom.
Yeah.
And then, and if you don't have time to do a boot camp, get started along with Bright Line Freedom. And but if that's really not where you're at, you're kind of like, yeah, I need to be doing want to do bright line eating, and this parts work stuff is kind of confusing, and I'm not quite sure about it. Then maybe the boot camp would be much more targeted, around just creating the support that they need to get started.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Whew. I'm excited. You ready for me to talk about Bright Line Freedom?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. Bright Line Freedom, living from your authentic self. It's a 15-week training in parts work, internal family systems, like you've been learning about today. It teaches you to understand the source of your various forms of resistance so that you can have your full bright body transformation and experience all the benefits of bright line eating long term. And I just want to say as a note, whatever your spiritual or religious perspective is, this course will help you tap into that and work with it. There is no conflict. We've had some Christians say, I don't meditate, and there's guided meditations, and there's workarounds for that. There's a way to get the same ahas through journaling exercises, for example. And really tapping into your spirituality or your religion can help strengthen your connection to authentic self. And this course will totally work with your faith perspective. There actually are some really good faith-targeted books on parts work as well that we can tip you off to. This course is a clear, comprehensive roadmap, and it's a wonderful mix of methods. We're very aware that people learn differently, and there's a lot of different ways to get at the same idea. So if you watched me and you're like, I don't know if I could go deep inside and find parts in there, there are ways to get at the transformation in a variety of methods. In Bright Line Freedom, you will learn to identify parts such as the inner critic, the indulger, the food controller, the isolator, the wounded child, the rebel, and the caretaker. You'll work with those parts through lectures, quizzes, workbooks, guided meditations, journaling exercises. You'll connect with your authentic self and live your life from this calm, clear place more and more. You'll do parts work with yourself or with a peer, and you'll learn how to do parts work with others as well if you want to. And the result that this leads to is a change, sometimes a very rapid change in unwanted, stuck behavior patterns, things that have been problematic for a long time. Really beautiful, rapid blossoming, and often deep healing of wounded parts. Really powerful healing. Really powerful healing. The course begins Tuesday, August 10th. That is coming right up. Registration is open now. And there are two ways to do this work. You can hire Everett to take you through it. He is the expert and he can bring you through it one-on-one. That's a $12,000 package, and he's happy to do that with you. Everett, do you want to say how people can contact you if they want to do the private package?
Yeah.
And have you take them through all this work?
Yeah, just go ahead and message me on my website. at everettconsidine.com. And if you're wanting to do session work with me, you can find out how to do that too. It's just if you Google my name, Everett Considine, it comes right up. But
Everett Considine, this is how you spell it, EverettConsidine, everettconsidine.com. So that's $12,000. It's the same content. Everett will just take you through it one-on-one. Or you can enroll in Brightline Freedom. There are benefits to doing it in Brightline Freedom because you get the community and you get the peer support as well. And the investment for the work, if you do it one-on-one, is $12,000. If you do Brightline Freedom, it's $997, or 3 monthly payments of $337. If you're a Bright Lifer, you get your Bright Lifers discount, or 3 monthly payments of $307. And there's trainings, coaching calls, witnessed parts work sessions, guided parts meditations, lessons, and exercises. If you're in the hub, you're going to get a tile called Brightline Freedom right there. Now, if you want to register, you see this part over here on the right, this offer. You might need to scroll so that you can see it. You're going to click, I want to join now. And what happens then is you'll get guided so that you'll just respond, whether you're a Bright Lifer or you have done Brightline Freedom before. You get a massive discount if you've already done the course. We know that there are people out there who want to take the course again. That's totally fine. And so all you have to do is click, I want to join now, and you'll be guided through that process. We have, for the first time ever, put together a package of bonuses for Brightline Freedom. I'm really excited to tell you about them. There's 3 amazing bonuses. The first is a bonus on finish line anxiety. This is what I had. So whenever it was coaching me, what I've been manifesting is a version of finish line anxiety. It's like, hey, my ideal goal weight range is like 110 to 115. Why am I hovering, for a couple years now, 5 pounds above that, 5 to 8 pounds above that, right? What's the deal, right? That's a version of finish line anxiety. It could be, if you lose weight down to some number, it could be way above your target ideal goal weight, but way above it, but you lose weight down to some number and then you start gaining weight again. Some sort of resistance to finishing the job.
A lot of times, Susan, too, it's that for a lot of people, it's that last 15, 20 pounds that they get stuck on.
Yep.
They get stuck. They just get stuck. It all kind of stops. And I actually, finish line anxiety came out of the realizations I had to lose my last 20 pounds.
There you go.
And then I did. And then captured it all for you. Yeah.
Beautiful. Now, the second bonus is from me, and it's a module on what it takes to sustain BLE long-term. Now, if you joined the boot camp just in June, you already have access to this. But if you didn't, you will get access to this for the first time. And oh my gosh, what a great, it's like the really bird's eye view of like, okay, I've been wearing size 4 clothes for 17 years now, and the ins and outs. And I got together with all of the Brightline Eating coaches who, have also been maintaining their bright bodies for years. Lyndon Morris Del Rio, 6 years in her bright body. Lynn Colston, all these years in her bright body. We started talking about like, what does it take to sustain this long term? And I believe it's a 15 video, kind of like a boot camp module. It's a 15 video series all about what does it take to sustain this long term, year in, year out, decades in, decades out. And then the third, if you enjoyed that little session that Everett and I did, we're going to do another one. I have a personal issue that's not related to food. And it's probably the biggest struggle of my life, probably the biggest tender part of my life. And Everett and I are going to do a parts work session on it and just get in there and do some really deep healing work. And it will be live, and you can sit and listen with me and hold space, and you can also hear the recording afterwards if you want to. So if you want access to that, then sign up for Brightline Freedom. There's a 30-day 100% money back guarantee. So if you get started, so if you're just not sure yet but you want to get started, get started. And you have 30 days to sort of suss it out and see if it's a fit. So join us. Can't wait to see you in there.
Hey, Susan, I'm just going to mention there's a secret bonus for the Freedom Circle
Oh, yeah.
people. And I'm trying to get the word out, 'cause right now it's just on Facebook. But I'm doing an advanced IFS facilitation mini course for Freedom Circle people that are retaking Brightline Freedom.
Beautiful.
So if they're retaking it, and this is the first time I've done this, and it's kind of the beginning of a newish program. But if you're in Freedom Circle and you're on the fence about whether you should retake it or not, if you retake it, then you're going to be able to be part of this this advanced peer facilitation mini course that's going to spread over the 4 months. It's going to be 4 Sundays spread over the 4 months.
Yeah, so it's a 15-week course. This is a deep dive. This is powerful, powerful, powerful. All right, so we're going to enable the chat thread so you can ask questions. All right, Kimberly says, I did Brightline Grit earlier this year. How different is Brightline Freedom than Brightline Grit?
It's so different. Yeah. But you're in a great position to get started in Brightline Freedom. You know, I actually train you in how to do that kind of back and forth facilitation that you saw me doing with Susan. And then in Brightline Freedom, we actually focus on healing, which I didn't talk about at all in Brightline Grit. Yeah. So it's just deeper. And this content, you know, you'll be reviewing some of the stuff you learned in Grit, and you need to review it. You just do that over and over with this material.
Yeah, I review it periodically, and it's really helpful. It's interesting because I'm so different when I come to it as I review it. The BLE parts map, right? The map of the caretaker and the isolator, and some of that is new. You have new content on the caretaker and the caretaker and the rebel. And the rebel is brand new. Yeah. Janet wants to know, does Everett have books? Well, funny you should ask, Janet, because Everett, I haven't been talking about this a lot. Everett's the co-author of my next book. So Resume is the next book. And as I was putting out the book Resume, as I was piecing it together, I was like, I can't talk about this without talking about parts. And I pulled Everett in, and I was like, we have to put parts in here, because that's really learning how to surf the sine wave of Reboot Resume is learning to live from authentic self. That's really what it is. And if you don't understand your parts and you don't understand this model, there's just no good way to really do that. So Everett is going to be a published author as of December 28th this year, December 28th. And maybe y'all will help us get that book onto the New York Times list. Go team. Go team. Harper wants to know, when's the next boot camp? Well, funny you should ask that, Harper. I'm not sure we'll be launching boot camps again. We'll see. We're doing an effort to not launch boot camps anymore. Ideally, just have them be evergreen. And so you can sign up for the Brightline Eating Bootcamp anytime. Literally anytime. Like, you could go to the website, brightlineeating.com, and click the Get Started tab and register for the bootcamp tonight. So Harper, the Brightline Eating Bootcamp is now and always. So ta-da. And notice, if a part of you is like, oh, well, that's too soon, I couldn't start now, that's resistance, right? So, and if you resonated with this work, you might consider doing Brightline Freedom first. Your call. Kathy says, how do I join the boot camp? You go to brightlineeating.com and you click Get Started, and then you sign up for the boot camp there. Kimberly wants to know, what kind of time commitment is there for Brightline Freedom, Everett?
2 to 4 hours a week.
That sounds good. I think I felt, because I've taken it, I feel like I have participated up to my level of need in more like an hour to an hour and a half a week. I feel like maybe an hour and a half. I always like to do one of the guided meditations and stuff. So somewhere between 1 and 4 hours a week will get you there.
Yeah.
Yep. Karen says,
oh, but Susan, also, just so people know, you can do it over any amount of time you need. right? Like,
Oh, well, yeah,
so
you're going to get access to the course for
6 months.
6 months after it ends. So you'll be able to extend it longer. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So you could go at a slower pace and take your time.
Karen has a question. Does parts work tie in with ACEs After Effects as well? ACE.
I'm not sure
Adverse.
what she's talking about.
So those are adverse childhood experiences. And yeah, of course. So adverse childhood experiences would typically create deep wounded parts and
Yeah,
protective systems to protect them. So that's the
yeah,
kind of healing that you can get down to. That's the kind of
yeah.
healing that you can get down to.
And I would say maybe not 100%, but a lot of people in BLE have ACEs.
Sure.
This community, people with food
Yeah.
addiction are typically,
Yeah.
wounded.
Yeah. Chris wants to know how much time is it per week? 1 to 4 hours. We just said. What day and time are the live sessions? It's all pre-recorded, except for some of the witnessed parts work sessions and the coaching calls, which will be held live and then recorded, so you can listen to them at any time. Do you have your days? Are they always at the same time, Everett? Do you have
Mine
yours?
are, yeah.
Yeah.
So once a week there's a live call. So my live call is on Saturdays at noon PST. So
Noon
the same
Pacific.
time. Same time we did this,
The
3
same
p.m.
time.
Yeah, so it's going to
sweet
have
spot
that same
time.
worldwide. That's why we picked the time.
Yep.
So people all over the world could participate.
Yep. Nancy wants to know, is it 15 weeks of online resources or are there live segments? Most of it is online resources dripped out for you. And then there are once a week, there's a live call that alternates between a Q&A and a witnessed parts work session. The witnessed parts work sessions will be very similar to what you witnessed Everett doing with me.
Yeah.
And it's very helpful to witness those. It really gives you a sense of what we're working with here.
But you don't need to be on the live calls. You can even submit questions beforehand and I'll answer them even if you're not on the call. So so you don't need to be on the calls. There'll be recordings of everything.
Yeah. Deborah says, what's your biggest aha so far? What's your biggest aha so far? I'm guessing you mean from parts work, Deborah? Do you want to answer that, Everett? And I'll answer it too.
You know,
biggest aha from parts work?
I don't know if that's exactly what my biggest aha is. How much work it takes to release weight and keep it off. Right? Like
what a thing it is.
Like I said, it takes a village. Like people have no idea really what it takes, and that's why they struggle with it. It's because they're not doing what it, and that includes lots of parts work.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, literally parts work is the missing piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
These things you've struggled with and you've never been able to just get a hand on them, and you're just confused. Yep. Like those things become clear and transform.
Yep. Oh my gosh, what's my biggest aha so far? You don't know this, Everett. I think my biggest aha is that I can actually heal, like deeply heal. I won't go into the long version of this story, but you all know that I did drugs as a teenager. Well, the sort of little told backstory of that is I fell in love when I was 14 years old. And my life was pretty, it was tootling along pretty well at that point. And I fell in love really deeply. Like the angels sang and Romeo and Juliet didn't even have it going on. I mean, me and this boy really, really were in love. And many, many, many months in, there was a betrayal and there was a thing, and our relationship crumbled, and we tried to piece it back together, but we just couldn't. And my heart was broken so bad, and I went into drugs. Like, it was right after that I started partying really hard. Anyway, the wounded part from that relationship, I found her just a couple years ago. It came up, in my present day relationships, right? That she got triggered and it started to create this stuff. So I did some parts work with Everett. I found this wounded part, and we did a healing session with her. We brought her out and we put her somewhere in nature. Do you remember this, Aurora? Do you remember this, Everett? And so it was we put her in a meadow in Oregon where I've been camping before, and I just went camping there again. And I went and I visited her there in the meadow where she lives, and she's healed. Like, she's just like free, and she's the part of me that helps me love and be loved as richly as I do. And she's not wounded anymore. Like, I'm really that, like, it's healed. It's healed. I think that's my biggest aha, is these deep wounds. I mean, you say, oh, well, you got a broken heart. Like, everybody gets a broken heart. Yeah, well, I went spiraling and, like, sucked down a lot of crack cocaine and snorted up a lot of crystal meth to heal, to try to, firefight away that wound. And all these years later, like, it's healed. It's healed. That's my biggest aha. In that vein, Kara says, can I use parts work for intimacy issues?
Oh, God, yes. Yeah. Talk about parts, right?
Yeah.
Talk
right?
about parts. Yeah.
Primarily, yes.
Yeah.
Sherry has a question. I'm wondering the answer to this too. Registration website says 14 weeks. You said 15 weeks just now. Which is it? Or is it 16 weeks?
It's 15 weeks.
It's 15 weeks.
And I think the 14 weeks was my fault. I think your team asked me, is it 14 and for some reason I just had 14 in my head. So, but it is 15 weeks.
15.
So it's my error.
Diane says, what is the 14-day challenge? The 14-day challenge is 2 weeks. Every morning you get a video from me, and it just guides you through starting Bright Line Eating, trying it for 2 weeks to see if it might be a fit for you. If you have any part of you that really wants to do Bright Line Eating, I recommend you don't start there. I recommend you start with the boot camp, because there's a 30-day 100% money back guarantee on the boot camp. So it can serve just as well as a dip your toe in the water and see if it works. But with the boot camp, you have access to support where you can get your questions answered. Like, you could get coaching. You could ask in the online community of other people doing the boot camp. And you can, like, it's a way better introduction to Bright Line Eating. Also, what happens at the beginning is way more robust. So I'd rather see you start there. Jen is typing in, yes, it was his fault, LOL. You're getting a little red from the BLE team. Laura says, does this involve going into childhood and family history like other therapies? I can't wait to answer this question. The answer, shockingly, is no, unless your parts need you to, right? So this is a big distinction between parts work and therapy. Therapy, you go excavating through your past. In parts work, you live your present day from here forward, and you only go looking into when you're triggered now, when you're eating off plan now, when you're fighting with your partner and you're behaving in a way you want to address now. Then you check and you do some parts work on that, and you might find that it has something to do with a targeted thing from your past, or you might not. But we call those moments in our present day where we're triggered, we call them trailheads. And you just follow that trail only. You don't go just excavating willy-nilly through your past. Is that fair, Everett?
Yeah, that's a great description of that.
Yeah.
Many times the protectors are protecting wounded parts that are related to family of origin stuff. So you might end up working with some family of origin stuff if you're healing a part. And we get to that at the very end of the course, after you've had a lot of groundwork has been laid before we even start to talk about healing parts. Yeah.
Amy has a beautiful question. Amy says, many people Many people won't get to a size 4. That is like the size of my leg. My goal is size 16. Are there people who go from 350 to 180 or 200 pounds and that's their healthy self? Yes, Amy, absolutely. Can be. And it also could be that when you get down to 200 or 180, you'll find that you could get a little lower than that. But your body will be the one that knows, and you will be the one that decides what your bright body is. You will be the one that decides, like, hey, I feel comfortable here, and there is no one in Bright Line Eating that will make you get thinner than you feel comfortable with. Absolutely. And your body will be honored every step of the way. And it's beautiful just the way it is. But, you know, if you're 350, I can imagine that there are ways that your life would be improved, and it would be, you know, it would be better still to take off some of that weight. Absolutely.
And there's always these slender women that you meet at conferences and stuff, and you find out they were 350.
Yeah, it does happen.
You know, it's a very common thing in Bright Line Eating.
Chris says, still unclear the difference between freedom, life, and boot camp for a newbie. Okay, Chris. The Bright Line Eating boot camp is the introduction to starting Bright Line Eating. It's 8 weeks. It's all online. So there's nothing in person about the boot camp. It's all online. It's an online course. And it will hold your hand through starting Bright Line Eating, like the food part, right? Like really focused on, go buy a digital food scale, go get a food journal so you can write your food down the night before. It'll guide you through the steps. You'll be in a safe, beautiful community of people who are starting the boot camp right around that same time, and you will join them in doing the Bright Line Eating boot camp. It is the foundation. It is how, like when you see us publish our stats that are mind-blowing, you know, way far and away be above any stats that I've ever seen in a published scientific journal, any other weight loss program anywhere publish, like in the Journal of Nutrition and Weight Loss. All those people did the boot camp. That's where we collect that data from, is the boot camp. Okay. Bright Lifers is what you can join after the boot camp. You have to do the boot camp first. Oops. Okay, that's Bright Lifers. And Bright Lifers is an annual membership that you can do after the boot camp. Okay. Bright Line Freedom is this course that we're talking about here today, and it's the parts work course that helps you do the inner work. And the inner work is good for healing. It's good for just living a healthy, good life, but it's also helpful for overcoming resistance that might crop up as you do the boot camp, as you do Bright Lifers. You might experience resistance in some form, even resistance to starting any of that stuff. That's Bright Line Freedom. It's the parts work piece. Okay. Nancy says, is the concept of self-love an integral part of healing?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, you end up loving these parts and feeling compassion for them, but also when you're living an authentic self, you're very compassionate and loving toward yourself and others. Everett, do you want to say more?
Yeah, you know, it's the kind of part that doesn't love us is our inner critics. They're those judges, like when we saw that judge that Susan had, and so, you know, when we're in our authentic self, love is there, love for others, love for ourselves, compassion, and you learn really quickly how to work with your inner critics and unblend from those parts. So if the idea of self-love seems like a mystery to you, you'll probably touch into it pretty quickly with this work.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Correction on the time of the live component of the course. The calls are at 1 p.m. Pacific. Everett, you changed them. 1 p.m. Okay. Pacific, not noon Pacific. 1 p.m. Pacific. So 4 p.m. Eastern. And on what day of the week? Saturday?
Saturdays, yeah.
Yeah. 1 p.m. Pacific. Okay. Wendy's grandmother comment. Wendy, what does grandmother mean in the firefighter section of the protective part of the mind? Got it. The firefighter might be a food indulger. And the loving grandmother is an archetype of a food indulger that says, "Oh, sweetie, you've had a hard day. Don't you need a cookie?" That's an archetype of a type of food indulger that treats us like a loving grandmother and just wants to give us food, just feed us because it loves us and it just wants us to be well. Pamela says, "Can you go at your own pace like boot camp?" Yes, you will get access for 6 months after the course ends. And for those who've done our courses before, you'll get access to the online community and the materials for 6 months after the course ends. It will all end at the same time this time. Shannon says, "Will we get to keep the modules when the course is done?" For 6 months after the course ends. So you'll have time to go through it all again, at least once, if not once and a half. Shannon says, "Is there a discounted price for those of us who have taken grit?" No. Shannon says, "Is everyone who signed up guaranteed a live session?"
Oh gosh, no.
The witness parts work sessions will just be like a small handful. I mean, would it be 8, I guess, individuals?
I do 2 per session now.
So 16.
So 16.
But
yeah.
still, that's like a fraction of it. But really, it's in witnessing them that you get a lot of value. That said, Shannon, it's quite possible that if you hop into the online community and the first thing you do is message Everett and say, I want to do a witness parts work session. I'm just saying that's what I would do if I wanted one. And that might be a way to go. But the other weeks are Q&As, and you'll get your questions answered there.
And you can always just hire me and pay me to do a one-on-one session with you. It's what I do.
Yeah, that's not $12,000. That's no.
That's like a normal session, right?
The normal cost of a therapist or whatever for one session. So you can just hire him as well. Lori wants to know if we will assign buddies in Brightline Freedom. No, but we'll make it easy to get buddies.
Yeah.
Rose says, "Can you say more about adverse childhood experiences impact on disordered eating and how IFS helps?" Yeah.
Probably don't have time to say too much, but the idea I think of ACE in IFS is a wounded part. Is when we go through trauma, we wound our parts, and those wounds, live inside of us, and we have a protective system of parts that build up around them. And so you're going to learn about that, about how to recognize your protectors, how to recognize your exiles, how to work with them. So you'll learn the IFS lens on all that. And so I think that's a succinct, kind of simple description. Totally.
So some people are interested in the price and they want to just go through the prices again, please. And what I invite you to do is click on the registration link on the right, because it'll walk you through, depending on whether you've done it before, whether you're a Bright Lifer or not, there's different prices. And so just click through till you get to the point where it says your price for you. That's going to be the easiest way to do it. Just click on the button. You'll know you haven't bought the course yet because you haven't, actually completed the order form. So just click on and just get through. And there's always on the order form, there's an option there for a 3 payment plan. So you can click there and you'll see that price. So just walk yourself through it. And that way everyone will get the price that's accurate for them. Okay. Beverly says, "Will Brightline Freedom continue to be offered each year?" Not necessarily. So we might be switching things up, and we don't have firm plans in the works on this, but we might be switching things up where parts work is more woven through some sort of membership that's just continuous or something. So,
we don't know.
We don't know. Yeah. We don't know. So Renee says, "I started the boot camp in 2019, but I never finished. Can I go into my account and start over?" You should be able to do that, Renee. The materials are still there for you. And Angelique says, is there a way to pay over longer if you're ready and keen to do parts work, but finance is an issue? Go to scholarship.brightlineeating.com, scholarship.brightlineeating.com, and that will help there. Shannon says, does the Freedom course go over the BLE food or just focus on parts? It just focuses on parts. So for example, you could just, get the food plan from the book. Yeah. Candace has a great question. What is the difference between the indulger and our saboteur? Great question. So when I first created Bright Line Eating, I had never met Everett. I didn't know about parts work. I didn't know about IFS, but I knew that there was a voice that whispered in my head, in my own voice, trying to convince me in various ways to eat more than, to eat more, to eat this, to eat that. And I shut myself off to it, but it felt like a saboteur. And so that's how I described it, kind of like a gremlin, kind of like a monster, kind of like a combatant. And really, all of our parts are the saboteur. It's just, this is a way more helpful, nuanced, true, real way to conceive of the voice that gets us to eat off plan, right? It's like, that's actually a part. And it might be multiple different parts interacting with each other. There's a system of parts there that's trying to get us to eat off plan in some way, or maybe it's just one food indulger. But yeah, I mean, isn't it interesting that my saboteur really turns out not to be the sneaky combatant monster, turns out to be a young, not very bright 20 to 25-year-old gal who just thinks that life would be more fun if I just ate a little bit more, like that's my saboteur, yeah. Judith says, I started boot camp but did not get beyond the intro modules. Do I have to pay again to pick up more? That's the same question, I think, that I just answered. You can just go back into your boot camp. You can also redo the boot camp. The benefit of redoing the boot camp, and you would get a huge discount, like 60% off. The benefit of redoing it is you would get put into a fresh online support community in Facebook, the boot camp house, of people who are actually doing the boot camp now. You'd be much more likely, and you would get, a whole fresh set of group coaching calls as well. So you'd be able to call in for coaching support. I recommend that, is like redo the boot camp. If you don't know how to sign up for the boot camp, or just go into your online account and you can sign up for the boot camp again, or just reach out to our support team. We'll help you. Anyone who needs support with any of this, you go to support.brightlineeating.com, support.brightlineeating.com. And I just a reminder that the registration link is over on the right. Janet says this was fun. Thanks. Candace says thank you. Lorraine says, will parts work alone help me stick to my own healthy living plan? Maybe. Yeah. I mean, it's, in my experience, it's the sharpest knife in the drawer. Like, it is the best tool for helping us to live from authentic self, that place where we don't have resistance to doing what we really want to do, what we know is best for us and what's really aligned for us.
And especially if your healthy living plan is something like Bright Line Eating that's structured.
Mm-hmm.
So it's real easy to see where you're deviating. Then the way I teach parts work is really ideal for that.
Yeah. Kimberly says, still finishing boot camp, but have been doing BLE since April. First started with grit. Freedom will overlap. Will it be too much? I would hop into Freedom and just wait a little bit before getting started. Like, finish up at least one of those, either boot camp or grit. Finish up. Yeah.
It's impossible to say like how important this is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You'd have to wait another year, and maybe this form of it might disappear. Yeah. Beautiful.
Everett, it's such a privilege doing this work with you. Thank you, my dear.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for helping me. I'm really excited to talk with you over the next few months
I
and let you
know. I can't
know
wait to hear.
how it goes. This has been a big issue with me. I'm
I
so
think
excited.
restaurants are an issue, I think, for everyone. So I think that's really going to have helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people. Yeah, including me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel really excited. I feel really hopeful about it. Thank you.
Yeah.
You've helped me so much in my life. It's redonkulous. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining
Yes.
us. Join us for Brightline Freedom if you want to be in it. If not, we just honor the time that you took to spend with us today. We totally get it. Everyone's got their path, and we know it's only a few people who will choose to go deeper with us, but we're excited to meet you, those of you who choose that. And thank you for being on this workshop with us.
All right. Goodbye,
Yeah.
everyone.
Bye now.
Bye bye.